blimey.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
okay.
No, I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, cripes, skin hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. As an Aussie that has been dive-bombed by our version of the magpie, which is much bigger, every springtime, the folk in this village need to use the old Aussie trick.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome to the show. It's just coming up to 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense. You knew that already. You've been listening to MG. Whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it is absolutely fabulous to have your company today. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I know a lot of you are off on the half term. Shove the kids out of the room and just enjoy a good listen. That's what I suggest, mainly because I've got lots and lots of top guests today. And coming up, we will be talking about an awful lot of big topics, including that news that broke overnight that a US trade court has blocked Donald Trump's tariffs. There was a big tariff war in a significant setback for the US president. The Manhattan-based Court of International Trade ruled that Trump had overstepped his authority by using emergency executive powers to impose tariffs across the world. So what happens next on that? Meanwhile, Britain is to spend £1 billion on AI and a hacking team to give the armed forces more power online to target hostile states, including Russia and China. That announcement's been made by Defence Secretary John Healey ahead of the publication of next Monday's Strategic Defence Review. There's a lot of big announcements on defence coming up in the coming months, and he's warned that the keyboard has become a weapon of war. And haven't we seen that with the cyber attacks we've seen recently? Also, we've got the Prime Minister attacking Nigel Farage for fantasy policies that will lead to a Liz Truss-style economic meltdown. He's arguing that Reform UK's pledges would cause mortgages, bills and rent payments across the country to surge. Yeah, so will mass uncontrolled immigration, mate. Oh, yeah, and the small matter of I don't know, £1 trillion bill for net zero, which you're still clinging to. Also, we're going to go back to the subject of cannabis. Remember that lots of calls, lots of absolutely brilliant calls yesterday on Sadiq Khan demanding that, calling for cannabis, which is currently classified as a Class B drug, to be decriminalised for people possessing it and using it rather than for those producing it. But actually, according to Dorset's Police and Crime Commissioner David Sidgwick, he says cannabis should be upgraded to a Class A drug alongside crack because of the harm it can cause. We're going to be talking about all of that, plenty more besides. And joining me for all the chat, and goodness me, he knows what he's talking about on all those topics, Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. Good morning once again.
Good morning.
Looking very bright and spring-like. We've got a green jacket, red tie, pink shirt. I mean, either that or you're having a nervous breakdown. It could go either way.
And orange trousers, yes.
You've got orange trousers. It's this bundle of spring in front of me. It's wonderful. It's always so good to see you. Let's talk serious stuff.
What, is there any?
Yeah.
Do we have to?
There's a lot of serious
please.
stuff. Lots to get into. Let's get straight into it. Trump's Liberation Day tariffs. I mean, it was mad. It was one of the maddest press conferences I've ever seen at the White House when Donald Trump stood on that board and he announced his tariff. We did better than everyone else with the 10% across the board tariff. We then had this, and we got, what was it? You know, what did it go up to? 145% tariffs on China. Mm-hmm. Everything, like more tariffs on the EU. Everything then got changed because he held back and suspended some for a month, for 3 months. Even did a deal with China and cutting them back. Talked about 50% tariffs on the EU the other day. Lol. Not good for us economically either, but nevertheless still quite funny. And again, that's not happening yet. Keir Starmer and Donald Trump announced in a phone call that there was this big deal they'd done on steel tariffs and on car tariffs. I'm not entirely sure that any of it's actually come into place yet. It's all rather unclear. Now this trade tribunal, this court, and it's a federal court, 3 judges, one of whom was appointed by Trump, another one was appointed by Ronald Reagan, so God knows how he's still standing, and another one appointed by Obama, but they've ruled that basically he's overreached his powers because same with the immigration and the deportations, he used emergency powers based on there's an invasion of the United States, close the border. He's using emergency powers here, implying in some way that the trade balance was an emergency. Clearly it isn't. It's the norm in US politics and economics to basically take that executive power away from Congress and give it to himself to impose these tariffs. They're going to challenge it. The US government's going to challenge it. It'll probably go all the way to Supreme Court. We'll see what happens then. I have a funny feeling they're going to agree with this court, though. What do you make of it?
Well, it shows that Donald Trump's rule by diktat, by presidential decree, is actually coming up against the stops of how
but he does have the right to issue executive orders.
He does have the right to issue executive orders, but there are some things that he can't give executive orders over without it going through the congressional process and the full debate process and get voted on and all the rest of it. And this is where the American courts are properly holding him to account. And
the
saying,
3 pillars of American
exactly. And I have been waiting for this to happen for quite some time because he's been dictating the whole way through and nobody's been saying, hang on, have you got the authority to do this? People are just assuming.
Well, they have. I mean, we've got these. There's 5 small businesses and a number of individual states have put this forward. Because if it went to Congress, it's interesting. An awful lot of Republicans would be very, very pro free trade, and they also understand that. I mean, the numbers he threw out were crazy. The disruption he's caused to international trade, the likelihood of a global recession as a result of these trade tariffs. If they do come back in, if they whatever, is huge. And the idea again, why is America surprised that they import more from Cambodia, or Vietnam than they export to them? A tiny and small country where people don't have the money to buy expensive American luxury goods. I mean, it's insane. It's insane. He clearly doesn't understand some. I know everyone says he's a great businessman. He's not a great businessman. He really isn't. He's the only man in the world who's lost money running a casino, for God's sake. I mean, put that through your head. But he inherited a load of money, but he doesn't clearly understand some really basic economics. And he also said that these tariffs would both bring in huge amounts of money in taxes, because it's a tax. They would also bring loads of companies back to America, to onshore, because they wouldn't face the tariffs. But he would also force everybody to come to the table and get to zero tariffs you're worldwide. All 3 mutually exclusive ends. Never really worked out which one was the one he really wanted. I don't even know if he knew what he really wanted or whether they were mutually exclusive.
Well, and the other issue is that by him making the statements, he's creating that uncertainty in business across the globe and investors across the globe, and that uncertainty is what causes economic harm. It's not necessarily the imposition of the tariffs. And if he doesn't get the tariffs through, what we'll then find is he'll go in and carry out another tactic. He'll put some other form of penalty.
And there are lots
US
of non-tariff.
companies.
I mean, we've got that with the EU. They put in non-tariff basically difficulties and borders for us, you know, in terms of paperwork and things on checks, and you can make things life difficult. And it's in our interest as consumers that goods are as cheap as possible, but it's also in our interest to protect key industries, you know, like our farming industry, like steel, like car manufacturing. There is a role in that. Also, staying stateside very briefly, because there's lots more to talk about here, although of course that has a massive impact on our economy here, and we'll get onto that in terms of what the PM's saying about Nigel Farage. Elon Musk, it's been announced, is going to leave the administration as of basically today. He said begin tonight, as in last night, Wednesday, American time. He was always going to, as a special government employee, is going to spend, you know, only a few months. I think, you know, May was roughly the time he had to end, because you have to, you know, basically declare certain interests and go through certain processes which he didn't want to go through because he wanted to maintain control of SpaceX and of his, you know, his cars as well. But it seems like there has been less. The bromance has been on the wane.
Yeah,
shall we say?
It has, and I think, you know, if you look at what's been going on, Elon Musk has been taking Trump's limelight, and Donald Trump won't like that.
I said this before he even joined. Yeah. The headline should always be about the Donald.
Yeah, exactly, and therefore, you know, Musk has caused the disruption that Trump wanted and has been slowly sidelined, because I think Trump and his advisors are beginning to realise the chaos that's causing across the United States.
It's also caused a huge amount of damage to Elon Musk's Tesla. I mean, just extraordinary in terms of share price collapsing and people attacking cars.
Exactly.
What's weird is, you know, he was the doyen, you know, his electric car manufacturers of the future. He was the left's, you know, big hero. Everyone loved their Teslas. It was the way of like showing, oh, look, I'm right on and lefty. The Democrats loved it, and then suddenly
extreme right in politics.
Yeah, and then people started setting fire to them. I mean, it's just extraordinary, isn't it? But there we are. That's the left for you. I mean, that is the left for you. It's just mad. Yeah, I'm just wondering, since he's got a little bit more free time, would you mind popping over here and sorting out our government?
Well,
we could do with a bit of doge.
We could do with a bit of that, but I think he's got a few problems with his rockets. You know, his latest one didn't.
Now everyone says this. He operates a different system in terms of you learn each time. The rocket gets further each time. He delivers rockets quicker and cheaper than NASA does.
Yes.
The man knows what he's doing.
And Boeing. And he's actually providing a real capability. That's where his talent lies, not necessarily around government. I
don't know, but someone who, you know, move fast and break things.
You need a disruptor.
This, to me, what he was trying to do in America, yes, there were mistakes. Of course there are. There are mistakes made by people who move slowly and carefully. More, I would suggest, is what he was trying to do. You know that equivalent you think we really need to clear out. We need to clear out a load of junk. And you can sort of start by going, well, okay, I'll remove this thing, I'll remove this thing. What he did was, which I think is a much better system, take everything out of the room, and then only put back the stuff you need or you really want. And that's a different methodology. Yes. And I think that, my God, we need that. And I would take that with everyone in Whitehall. Literally, everybody, bye-bye. Right, and now we're going to bring back people who've done stuff and are getting stuff done and have the right attitude and understand the notion, by the way, that they're civil servants and they do what they're sodding well told and don't try to impact government policy.
Bin the self-licking ice lollies. There you go.
I think what he said was very rude. I don't know. We had kumquats from in Collins yesterday.
Definitely
the self-licking ice lollies.
Self-licking ice lollies. You know,
explain yourself, man.
Well, that's what lots of government departments are. I remember in military headquarters, you know, everyone would go off on block leave, and you'd be sitting there during the day, and people would be really, really busy when you're all working, and say, "Oh, I've got hundreds of emails, and I have to do this, and I have to do that." Then everyone goes on leave, and you come back again. So how many emails did you get when you're away on leave? Oh, none. My inbox is clear because nobody's in the building. Well, that means everyone's just interacting with each other for the sake of interacting with each other. So you're a self-licking ice lolly.
I've learned a whole new thing today, but there we are. Let's get on. I'm just going to leave that analogy behind for a little bit. Let's talk about Nigel Farage. It's very, very interesting. The attacks on Nigel Farage coming from Labour. They're almost like giving up on the Tories. Yeah, whatever, irrelevant. I have to say, I find, and again, it's not a sexist thing, but I think that the Prime Minister's attitude towards people who question him in the Commons is so high and mighty and contemptuous.
Yes.
I mean,
he hasn't answered a single question.
No, don't give up on that. No Prime Minister has ever answered a question in PMQs, that's, you know, unless it's a planted one. No, but there's a tone. I'm just saying that is a tone that on a Friday night in a lot of pubs in Britain will get you a punch in the face.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that tone doesn't pass muster in many places, but he's got away with it in this little rarefied world he lives in, Mr. Working Class son of a toolmaker nonsense. But he's gone for Nigel Farage repeatedly at PMQs. He's gone for him again in his speech he's going to make today, talking about Nigel Farage's fantasy policies. He said they will lead to a Liz Truss-style economic meltdown. Now, Nigel Farage, I bring back winter fuel allowance for all pensioners. Again, put it inside the pension main payment so you can tax it for the better off pensioners. Tick, job done. Absolutely. It's a hugely unpopular move by Labour to remove it from 10 million pensioners, some of whom really need that money. Wants to scrap the two-child benefit cap, which I think is an insane move by Nigel Farage. I don't know who he thinks that's appealing to. Especially not working voters, working class voters who have to live next door to the people who aren't working and getting those extra benefits while having more kids, which those people next door can't afford to have. But also things like, having as it says, it's affordable, having a tax threshold of 20 grand before you start paying any tax. Again, I don't agree with that either. I want lower tax rates at lower wages, but I think everyone should be brought into the tax system earlier than they are right now, simply because people need to feel they've got a stake in how government money is spent. If you're just a taker, not giving anything, you have different views on how much tax rates should be. I think that's really important. But the idea that his policies are fantasy any more than Labour policies with net zero and this mythical £22 billion black hole. Now we've got a £30 billion black hole, and just handing, massive pay rises to train drivers and pay rises to doctors and things. I mean, they're all living in a fantasy world, aren't they?
They are. Well, Keir Starmer, remember, backed Jeremy Corbyn's policies, which make Nigel Farage's claims or desires to be loose change down the back of the sofa.
Very good point.
So, what this says to me is Starmer is concerned about Farage. Five MPs in Parliament, and Starmer's got a huge majority, and Starmer's concerned about this tiny little party. He's seen the way it's destroyed the Tories, and he's now going, crikey, this is going to get me in exactly the same way. And he's gone on the attack mode.
They used to ignore reform and laugh at them, and that's not. Well, they're still doing that nonsense. Oh, he's a posh boy thing. No one cares.
Yeah, but that's just wrong. And we've got politics by soundbite, and this is where Farage knows perfectly well that we're 4 years out from a general election. He can put
It's another 4 years of this. 4 years.
Yeah, and 4 years of us talking about it.
Sorry.
But Nigel Farage
self-licking ice lollies, apparently.
Exactly. Nigel Farage can come out with anything that he wants to say that he can do this stage out to scare Starmer even more, to force Starmer to try and attack him, and then leave Starmer vulnerable. Starmer's not good whenever he's on the back foot. And
absolutely
Farage is
not
on the back foot at the minute.
Absolutely not. It's absolutely. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do get in touch at 0344 499 1000. The Prime Minister particularly accusing Nigel Farage of fantasy policies that will lead to a Liz Truss-style economic meltdown. It's a very good point that he backed. They're going to write off all tuition fees. They were going to spend. I mean, there was going to be a huge amount of spending. Nationalise everything. Oh God, it was going to be as these companies' contracts ended. Well, they weren't going to buy out the train companies.
They hadn't actually said how they were going to do it.
They didn't have. They were a bit surprised to actually get so close to winning. I think most people were terrified as 2017. It's one of the reasons why Boris won so big.
Exactly.
People didn't want him. But again, no doubt at all Starmer is running scared. But are Nigel Farage's policies, are they fantasy? And if they are, and some of them, let's face it, are are there any more fantasy than anyone supporting net zero or all these payouts? And I mean, I think most of our politicians live in fantasy land on their spending. I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. I'd love to hear from you about Donald Trump as well and that news about the tariffs. Let's also talk about the Liverpool parade crash suspect. It's still being held in custody, still being questioned. There was a midday deadline yesterday for police having already been extended for him to be questioned before any charges can be brought against him. And it was extended once again. which is very interesting because so much of what this driver is accused of is on camera.
Yep.
Numerous witnesses. He been charged with. He faces charges likely he's under arrest for numerous attempted murder. We know, was it 79 people now known to be children, babies. As a father, he's been talking about how he just was holding onto the pram, and then the
pram was taken away.
The pram was just gone, and then he's sort of rushing, trying to protect his wife. His wife is on the bonnet and then under the car, recovering with a leg injury. I mean, I've said it every day. It's a miracle no one died. Yeah. But what is really fascinating is what is emerging about this man. Married, father of three, company director. They always put this in its Daily Mail thing. This £300,000 house. It's an expensive house around Liverpool. He, everyone's going. He's his lovely neighbour. The first thing the wife knew about it was when she saw the car on the news and the police turning up. But then we also got these allegations that there was that he was under the influence of drugs when this happened. There is the possibility, isn't there, that this is just a horrible accident. Someone panicking. Now, if you're behind a wheel, but again, it's an if. We haven't seen any charges. If you're behind the wheel when you're under the influence of drugs. I've got to be honest with you, feel the same about that and drink driving. I wouldn't even have one drink and get behind the wheel of a car. As we know, they're big metal boxes that can be weapons and not lethal, and thankfully not lethal in this case. But the circumstances of this are just bizarre, given that I think most of us, when we first saw that footage, thought, oh, terror attack.
Yeah, the circumstances are bizarre. If he found himself in the wrong place, why didn't he just stop and turn the engine off?
And his car was being attacked.
His car was being attacked.
But that was because I think he'd already narrowly missed people.
And then he continued to drive over quite a distance, and you could see the pictures of him weaving in and out of the crowds. He wasn't trying to avoid the crowds because there was a gap in between them. He was driving into them for some reason or other. So the motivations behind this, the police will be trying to identify that. I'm sure they'll be waiting for the follow-up on all the tests that have been done on to see if there are drugs, drink, and anything else, and to see if anyone's motivated him. The fact that he's a father of three and a company director is irrelevant.
It's irrelevant. It's kind of we often have ideas of the sort of people who, again, Islamist extremist or some I don't know. You've got these ideas of someone who might do something like this, and it does just appear that this But I suppose people are going, well, this is someone who's could be living next door to me, and then this awful event has happened. Now, I'm not saying people should have sympathy. I mean, God, the awfulness of what's happened, but it is just quite bizarre, and it's interesting that the police have been given more time to question him before any charges are or not brought.
It is bizarre, and it's clear there is some uncertainty with something somewhere. Otherwise, the police wouldn't be asking for additional time, because as I said, the CCTV is quite clear. He drove in, he followed an ambulance through the barriers, and then continued to try and push his way through the crowd.
Did he think that the road was now open?
That or
and then you got scared,
or we could speculate around everything. Was he a rival football fan who just hated the fact that this was another football club?
Yeah, it is absolutely fascinating. I mean, again, we'll wait and see if there is any development on that. Lots more to talk about, including we're finally going to get some reservoirs built, but I mean not for about another 10 years. But well done, governments, and also West Street and the Health Secretary saying that striking junior doctors, well, they've got a ballot on whether or not they're going to strike. Of course, they're now resident doctors. They've which is a more accurate job title. They're not all junior. Have lost the public support. It's gone down from sort of majority support to around 40% support and going down to 30%. I mean, actually, maybe a lot of people don't support doctors going on strike for higher wages. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Telephone number is the same, 0344 499 1000. We'll get your calls up next. This is Talk.
DEI stuff is actually very radical. It comes from a kind of very early 70s cultural form of Marxism, which very crudely divides the world into oppressed and oppressor. And there's no nuance. So if you are white and male, you're sort of double oppressor. Quotas have been imposed very radically. Meritocracy goes out the window. Whiteness training gets rolled out. When you then look at the data, which I've been doing with a Harvard professor, they don't work. We're spending globally $14 billion a year on DEI programs.
No, they don't.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:25 is the time. Philip Ingram is with me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to have your say on all the big topics. Andrew, old favourite Andrew, is on the line from Hertfordshire. And Andrew, you want to talk about Nigel Farage with the Prime Minister basically attacking him over what he calls fantasy policies. It will end up with a Liz Truss style, economic mayhem, and it won't work.
Yeah, it's interesting that you compete with other news stations and you never mention them. You just lead with the story of the day. Philip's, all your guests are crackerjack. Philip's crackerjack, and you drive it forward. Isn't it funny that the Labour government has got no policies that are succeeding? So the paranoia is to attack the one person that's succeeding. He's not in power, he's just stating things. And then Nigel Farage comes out, he makes a statement, he's driving the agenda. And that really means we have really weak government whose policies are failing.
Yeah, and the extraordinary thing about that is they haven't even been in power 11 months. That's the thing. It's extraordinary how massive majority, Tories completely trounced. Keir Starmer should be riding on a crest of a, confident wave.
Yeah, at school we did this thing about people going into the desert and being led out of it. It was just desperate. I mean, 11 months, it could be 1,100 years. I mean, it is wretched. It really genuinely is. But the agenda is being driven by reform. And it's very interesting. You look at Jenrick's post today on your favourite, The Tube. It's a really good one. He's lost weight. He's looking dynamic. He's the man that's going to just get... Farage will never merge with the Tories until after the election if it's a hung parliament.
I don't think either party would do well, actually, if they actually said they were being accused. But you mentioned this as it was actually a video. This is something Robert Jenrick is doing a lot of. He's the Shadow Justice Secretary, of course, wants to be the Tory. Who are we kidding? He doesn't. No one's thinking he's even pretending to hide it. He clearly thinks Kemi Badenoch's not going to last more than another year or so as leader, and that he's going to step in. But he's done. I have to say, all credit to him. A very good video of him basically challenging people on London Underground who he's videoed going through the barriers and not paying for a ticket, even though there's cameras everywhere, there's staff everywhere, no one challenges them. I have to say, I challenge people every sodding week about it. But the staff won't do anything because they're basically not allowed to do anything. They can't hold them. They'll be done for assault. The police aren't anywhere, or they turn up in their uniform. And what a surprise, no one jumps the barrier when there's a policeman in a uniform. And he's basically challenging them and then takes one over to the police to actually get him arrested. I mean, that's the kind of stuff, I think, that's kind of meat and potato stuff that actually he's learnt from Farage.
Yeah, and the good thing is, at the end of it, you see the call to action. It's not about London, it's about the country. And this is the thing now. Farage is driving it. The Labour Party, everything's turned to custard because they gave all of the money to the unions. The doctors are back for more. You can see, actually, they were good in opposition. In government, they really are shambolic.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And again, I think most people were just horrified by the whole, we're just going to give a load of money to a load of unions. I'm in favour of doctors and nurses who we've got a shortage of getting pay rises so we can actually recruit enough people and keep enough people. I don't understand why you're giving a massive pay rise to train drivers. We've got plenty of them. I'm sure we could recruit a whole load of them very, very quickly if we wanted to. That never made sense. But it's just paying your paymasters, isn't it?
Yeah, but remember now, Julia, you, me, Philip, we actually employ train drivers. They're actual civil servants now because they're back on the government payroll.
Well, only some of them. Only some of them. When
Labour have finished, all of them. And do you remember how balanced they were when they were employed by the government before?
I don't think it's going to get any better or worse, but there we are. Andrew, great call. Thank you very much indeed. Interesting point there, Philip. You know, that actually, you know, it is, you've got this Prime Minister should be riding high. He's like, you know, he's got his massive majority, and actually it's Farage driving the agenda.
Yeah. It is Farage driving the agenda, and we're not getting any initiative and thinking out of the government. You know, if the government want to take this thing out of what was the junior doctors, now the resident doctors, just turn around and say, right, you know, all of those who have come through university, your tuition fees are going to be cancelled. And therefore, that will give them effectively a pay rise
7 years.
at the lower level. Yeah. The government's paid those tuition fees already, and it wouldn't mean that there would be any change in the money calculations. But that would take the sting out of the BMA who are jumping up and down and trying to create things. We're not playing things in a thoughtful way. It's all sound bites that are being bounced around.
I don't think anyone... I've said this all the time. I think about countries like China, and they think through things for 40 years. We don't even manage 40 minutes.
40 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Please, just 40 minutes. Let's go to another call. And Ian is in Bridgend. Ian, you wanted to talk about Donald Trump and those tariffs. What do you make of that court decision?
Yeah, that's right. Hello, Julia.
Hello.
Hello, well, as here we are again. You know, it's same as we experienced with Brexit. Trump was quite clear, you know, in his discussion with Joe Rogan, went on for 2 hours, as the American electorate were informed, tariffs were the way to go. You know, he's looking to do away with income tax on anybody below $200,000 a year. This was the route. He was democratically elected, and here we are, lawfare again. Exactly.
Do you really think that the thing is, America has a constitution about what powers different arms of government have, whether you're the president, whether you're Congress, or whether you're the court, Supreme Court is the highest court, and this court is basically saying, and with the judge that he appointed, by the way, Trump appointed, saying you don't have these executive powers. You're claiming there's an emergency because there's a balance of trade deficit. That's not a national emergency. That's not a pandemic. That's not a war, and you can't use executive powers that you don't have.
As a way around it, you know, it's supposed to be government by the people, for the people. I give you another indication, what I consider a much bigger story. You've got 12 million people have been exposed by Musk out there, between the ages of 120 and 250, supposedly, still claiming old age pension.
Again, some of that wasn't true. There was a whole system, but those people, most of them were not getting benefit. As in, the idea is that families basically claiming benefits from not stopping benefits for parents and grandparents who've long died. Again, read up on that, and it's that's been a bit of a misleading story, a lot of that. But no, but that's my point. Here's my thing. I support a lot of the things that Donald Trump has been trying to do. I absolutely do. The tariff thing, I think he genuinely doesn't understand international trade. I think genuinely he just simply doesn't know what he's talking about on this front. And those tariffs are going to damage American consumers. They're going to damage British consumers, British business. Could cause a worldwide recession if he did bring them back in. They're all constantly suspended. It's caused chaos. Why would you support his right to do that when the courts say he doesn't have that power?
Yeah, but look at all the billions of investment that are going into America on the back of all these threats.
All there.
He's a businessman, is he? You know,
he's not a very good businessman.
Oh, I don't know. You look at the American economy compared to our economy.
Yeah, but he didn't drive that.
I think he's a pretty good businessman.
You think someone who inherited hundreds of millions from his dad and lost but managed to lose money on running a casino is a good businessman?
Have you ever run a business, Julia?
No, but I'm pretty sure that no one else loses money running a casino.
In the stock market, you lose money from day to day. He's what America needs, and he's what's been elected by the majority of...
Even if the tariff policy that he imposed is actually pushing up the prices overall for consumers by something like $3,500 each family?
I know, this is the
making them poorer.
You look at his popularity ratings; they're through the roof.
No, they're not. No, they've plummeted.
Yes,
no, Ian. No, that's simply not true. They've absolutely plummeted.
I don't think so, Julia.
Find me some popularity ratings. Genuinely, they have plummeted. I think he's got the lowest in popularity ratings of any president this early. He's got the MAGA lot love him. But actually, a lot of the middle ground who voted for him because they were so fed up with the Democrats are not happy with a lot of things he's done.
I don't think so. I don't think so, Julia. You know, if you get on the ground in America, you talk to the ordinary working American, they support him 100%.
They don't support him 100%. They're very unhappy about prices going up. He was elected chiefly on brilliant on immigration and all that, but they elected him chiefly on cost of living, and he's put the cost of living up, not down.
He hasn't.
He has.
No, prices have come down out there.
They haven't.
Look, we could banter back and forth with this.
No, because I'm not giving an opinion. You're giving an opinion. I'm giving fact.
No, you know,
the cost of things is an actual fact.
No, I'm just see the way.
It's not my truth.
All the Americans, and the ordinary Americans love him. They support him all the way, and that's the way they voted. We can say whatever we like in this country, but the Yanks love him.
You can say that. That's not what the polling suggests. But and polls that previously gave you massive support. We're going to have to agree to differ on this one. Great call. Appreciate you calling it in from Bridgend there. 10:35 is the time. Going to take a quick break. Going to be talking to the brilliant independent peer, Baroness Claire Fox, about all things political, and is the Prime Minister running scared from Nigel Farage? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Welcome back. 10:36 is the time. It's already got lively. Keep those calls coming in. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Philip Ingram even is still with me. Don't know what happened there. And right now joined by Baroness Claire Fox. She's an independent peer, of course, and director of the Academy of Ideas. A very good morning to you, Claire.
Good morning, Julia.
Always good to talk to you. Let's start, if we can, with Nigel Farage, Prime Minister today. I mean, he used to just mock and ignore, alternately, Nigel Farage. Now, this little party with just 5 MPs, even though he's got this massive majority, Keir Starmer, he's been in power for almost a year. He seems to be obsessed, and as some of our callers are pointing out, running scared from Nigel Farage. He says that Nigel Farage has got fantasy policies, some of his policies regarding tax and benefits and the like. And he says they're going to lead to a Liz Truss-style economic meltdown. Is he right?
So there's two different things, isn't there? I mean, on the one hand, he's at last realised, or Labour have at last realised, that Labour voters, people who voted last time for Keir Starmer, are now completely fed up with the government and are looking to reform. And there's a real appeal from a new insurgent reform for working class people, ordinary people. It just kind of symbolises an opportunity to have a reset, to try something new. So the problem for Keir Starmer is that just simply disparaging reform, just attacking them, the danger is that they just end up attacking the kind of people who they want to vote for them. That's always a danger. Yeah. But I think this Liz Truss attack is a bit of an odd one, because by saying the words Liz Truss, it creates a kind of scaremongering atmosphere. But the difficulty for Keir Starmer is that in this instance, Farage's policies, regardless of what you or I might think of them, are directly appealing to ordinary people.
Yeah.
And they're the sort of policies which in the past you'd have associated a Labour Party with, trying to do things to alleviate the hardships of ordinary people.
Yeah.
So he can say the word Liz Truss and try and imply some sort of mad right-wing libertarian moment, but actually,
it's the opposite.
I think the opposite, exactly.
Well, and there are a lot of people I know who sort of big sort of instinctive reform supporters. A lot of people getting in touch with me. I know it's a conversation I had with reform councillor and old friend Darren Grimes, big Brexiteer, as you'll know, yesterday, and the Tories put it out as sort of an attack video on reform. I discovered only when someone sent it to me, like, thanks, Tories, and basically saying, exposing sort of reform policies. But again, I don't think this looks good on any of them.
Well, the thing I would say is that we can have an argument about whether Farage's proposed ideas have any merit in and of themselves, or whether they are realistic in terms of finances, and whether in fact the markets might get scared. But I think, as your previous caller, the Welsh gentleman who made a very passionate defence of Donald Trump, in some ways, at this stage at least, a lot of this is symbolic. And so if you sort of say to people, you voted for this, and either in America the courts have got in the way, or if you say the markets won't let you do it, that makes people more defiant, because it feels like it's a slap across the face for a democratic decision. And
it goes back to Brexit, and all the clever people in the banks don't think this, all the big business don't think this is a good idea. Since when do we vote to benefit them? But that's the thing, is that there are so many people who we inclined to be, and I say people getting in touch with me, reform voters, who actually are much more into the free market. And what on earth is Nigel Farage talking about? Giving winter fuel allowance, giving that back to a lot of pensioners, very popular policy. But if it's not inside the actual pension, it's a one-off number, you can't tax it from the richer pensioners. But also scrapping the 2-child benefit cap. That is an incredibly popular policy, but particularly among working class voters who live next door to the people who basically keep having kids and can't afford to pay for them, while these people get up at 6 in the morning and go to work every day.
Yeah, but you can have rows about these specific policies. That's what I'm trying to say.
You're saying it's the big picture.
I'm saying it's a bigger picture, and I think that if you actually look at it, the mood is such that people want to trust a new regime in a way. That's what they're looking for. And so there's lots of things about reform that you say, I agree with that, I don't agree with that, or I'm not sure about Farage, or I think this, I think that. And yet still, the opinion polls, which are not an election, I know, would indicate that in the end, people are prepared to throw their hat in here. And there is some parallel here with what's happening around Europe, with what in fact happened in relation to the vote for Trump.
Yeah.
And it's almost as though, I mean, you've made the point in your exchange earlier, well, is Trump popular now? But the point is that there's something about the mood which kind of has propelled the need to shake things up and change things dramatically.
But whatever we've done before hasn't worked. It's not looking after us. So we'll try something new. What do you make of where going on to Labour policies? I mean, the Health Secretary Wes Streeting, he's spoken out against junior doctors who are currently having a ballot on whether or not they should be going on strike or not for another big pay rise. Now, they're wanting 29%. That's a huge pay rise they're looking at. But they've only they had 22% a couple of years ago. That was actually backdated 2 years, and it did cover a period. Certainly, half of that would have been when we had 11% inflation. Not many other people got those sort of increases. That said, we have a shortage of doctors. We can't retain them. We can't recruit them. There is an argument in the free market. You need to pay people more if you're going to get them in. But Wes Streeting has basically said, look, don't vote for this ballot because you don't actually have the support of the public, and you'll choke the chance of the NHS to basically start, properly dealing with the massive backlog of treatment that's needed. They got recent YouGov polling showing that back when doctors first went on strike last summer, we're looking at 52% of the population, so more than half the population supporting doctors in their strike action. Now we are looking at just under 40%. So that's quite a big fall in terms of the number of people who would be willing to support doctors. But again, still more than I'd expect. What do you make of it?
So I think that Wes Streeting's got a bit of a problem, and he's one of the cabinet ministers I've got a bit of regard for, to be honest. He's been better than most. But I think that rhetorically he's in trouble. He announced that he was going to get rid of NHS England. Everybody said that if he was going to give that huge pay rise to the junior doctors, who I see have now renamed themselves so they're less junior.
Well, they're not junior, they're highly experienced doctors.
I know,
so they should be called resident
doctors. The name change is confusing.
Yeah.
We all call them junior doctors.
Yeah.
Anyway, all I'm saying is Wes Streeting said that he was giving that pay deal and that would be part of a major reform of the NHS.
Yeah.
The difficulty we've got is the major reform of the NHS bit of the deal has not occurred.
Yeah.
So what we have here is a repetition of doctors coming forward and saying, we demand more, we demand more. Whereas at the same time, the much vaunted and rhetorically promised reforms, like get rid of NHS England. But he said that, but nothing seems to have occurred. And so we all know that the NHS is not fit for purpose at the present time. So I think that this time round, when the junior doctors say that they're going on strike, there's much more disgruntlement about the state of the health service. I also think that the BMA has been exposed slightly as, rather than being some sort of neutral body that just represents doctors, has kind of revealed itself to be a rather more politicised organisation. I mean, they were one of the first people who came out, just to use an example, to say that despite the Supreme Court decision, that a section of the BMA came out and said biological sex is not biological.
Yeah, we don't want to go to any of those doctors. Don't let those people treat your children.
Exactly.
Is all I can say.
So I think there might be I think that there might be a waning regard for the BMA as a kind of simply a representative body. And I've heard various interviews with people from the junior doctors this morning, and I have to say they didn't cut a very sympathetic figure.
They've kind of got a bit hard left. I also, by the way, a lot less sympathy for the NHS. I mean, we've had again on the Supreme Court ruling. I think it's the Birmingham NHS Trust, where they're basically offering, very, very lengthy, counselling and courses for people who were traumatised by the Supreme Court decision and the statement of biological fact of what a woman is. And of course, it's during working hours, and this is when they are literally cutting the number of staff, not actually delivering, for patients, but they've got time to send staff on these voluntary courses that will cost a fortune, paying all these DEI grifters. I mean, I think most people are literally like, you know what, if you can't give me a cataract operation within a few months, but you've got time to go on some sort of, I'm really traumatised because apparently men aren't women course, then I'm not sure you should be employed by the NHS and paid for by taxpayers.
And all I'm saying is those are the very same people who now are acting a very entitled way. I mean, like you said, it's absolutely appropriate that you pay people fairly. It's absolutely appropriate that people have the right to strike. But if you feel as though you're being made a mug of, and that people are in a very time when we all know that there's less to go round, the economy is not exactly thriving. And when you've got sections of the public sector, even when it's the health service, you can no longer get away, it seems to me, with saying, I am virtuous because I represent the NHS.
Yeah.
Ever since lockdown, in fact, there's been a much more ambivalent relationship between the public and the NHS.
I don't think we're banging saucepans for them again, put it that way.
No, exactly. I think it's changed.
Absolutely.
And so I hope and think that the BMA might find that their ballot is less successful this time, but certainly I think the public attitude has changed.
Yeah, they may have overplayed their hand, mayn't they? Baroness Claire Fox, always a good talking to you, independent peer. Thank you very much indeed. Philip Ingram, do you think the BMA have overplayed their hand?
I think they have, and I think it's sad that the BMA have gone from being the professional body for doctors and providing professional standards to being more of a militant union, more akin to the train drivers and others. That's a very sad
they're properly hard
move.
Left, a lot of the people.
They are, and they're representing professionals. The proper white collar workers, if we're getting into the old vernacular, rather than blue collar workers. But they're doing it from a blue collar behaviour perspective. That's not the way we should be treating this.
No, absolutely. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Have you lost support for the doctors if they went on strike again? 0344 499 1000. Up next, going to talk to former Detective Chief Superintendent of the Met Police, Kevin Hurley, about this row over cannabis. Should it be decriminalised, or should it be made a Class A drug? Also, a Talk Radio exclusive about fly tipping. That's coming up next. This is Talk.
say anything.
They'd rather be around there waving rainbow flags and Palestinian flags and joining in and then catching real criminals. That poor old guy.
I know what they're doing. They're doing it by the book. Give us the knife. If you don't give us the knives, we will have to taser you. He's 92. He's got one leg. It's just...
I think they need striking off, to be honest.
Well, they are going to come before a disciplinary board at the police where they'll be tried.
The poor man, and he's dead now. That's terrible.
It really is.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Thank you very much, Steve, for joining me. 10:50 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still with us. Joined right now by Kevin Hurley. He's a former Detective Chief Superintendent at the Met Police and joins us to talk all things, criminal right now. A very good morning to you, Kevin.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. I've got a lot to get through. Can we talk about cannabis? Big discussion on the show yesterday, actually, about cannabis, where we've had, of course, Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, saying he thinks that cannabis should be downgraded from basically a Class B drug to basically have it decriminalised for personal use, for possession, not for dealing it, not in producing it. But actually, we've had a rebuke for him from a policing chief who's actually said no, cannabis should be upgraded to a Class A drug because of the harm it can cause. This is David Sidgwick. He's Dorset's Police and Crime Commissioners, and he says that, Sadiq Khan is completely wrong on that front. Whose side are you on, or another side entirely?
I think they're probably somewhere in the middle.
Where we are right now, Class B drug.
Yeah. I mean, the question is, what's Sadiq Khan's motivation? From what I read, his motivation would appear to be a certain group within the London community, which essentially African Caribbeans, come into contact with strife with the police because of their misuse of cannabis, which causes police to stop and search them. My point on that is obey the law and it won't be a problem.
Is this a problem? Met Police apparently stopping more young black people because they're using the reason stroke the excuse of you smell of cannabis. We've got therefore reason for stop and search. But the statistics suggest that actually white people and black people use cannabis at the same level. So, but more black people are being searched for it.
I mean, while I'm on that subject, I think this is much more interesting in some ways. It's a fact that in the last 15 years, stop and search by the Metropolitan Police on black males has dropped to 1/6 of what it was once before.
Yeah.
And the net result of that is the carnage we see on our streets now with black kids killing each other. Now, back to where we were, one of the things that a lot of people don't realise about cannabis, that excessive use can produce psychosis.
Yeah.
So we do get quite a lot of incidents within London of psychopathic behaviour of people who are extreme cannabis users. So there is some truth in the fact that it's a damaging drug.
Yeah, I think that's a massive issue that's often overlooked. People think of it as just some sort of, a few people sort of sitting around smoking dope. It's not. That's certainly not the kind of drugs a lot of people are using.
I mean, Julia, do you know the real thing is, and you've heard me say this before and a number of other people who've come on, who've been in the business for years, the issue is you can tinker around with the laws as much as you like. When the prisons are completely full to capacity as they are, probation is completely overwhelmed. Yeah. Court cases are backed up by years, and the police are hemorrhaging experienced staff. There's no point tinkering with all these laws. It's window dressing.
Yeah, and also again, they're not enforcing the law as it currently is. Well, this is an interesting thing. Yeah, a lot of people say you can tackle the organised crime gangs by legalising the drug. Lots of time we were talking to people on the show yesterday talking about legalising all drugs even, and taxing it and even regulating it and the like. But it's interesting. Organised criminals will always find a new way of making money, and it's interesting. We've got a talk exclusive today about fly tipping becoming the new county lines as crooks are cashing in on the waste racket. And basically we've got record levels of fly tipping. Basically it's industrial scale, and gangs are making millions a year. They go and pick up lorry loads of rubbish, charge people for it, and then they don't pay to go and take it to the dump or dispose of it themselves. They literally just dump it by the sides of roads, often in the countryside. It looks awful. It costs a fortune to be cleared up, and these people are making millions, it seems, and no one seems to do anything about it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I live in the worst affected borough of the worst affected county in the country, which is Elmbridge in Surrey. And the reason is because the A3, the M3 and the M25 all go round it.
Yeah.
The London, and these are organised criminals.
Yeah.
It's
not some random bloke doing a bit of work on his home and then he's got a few bin bags and he just puts them in the countryside. They're paying, they're being paid by people to take their rubbish away.
Sure, and of course the problem with it is it's falling through the cracks of enforcement, because when we've got a situation we've already discussed where police are not in a position to deal with drug misuse, they don't turn up to your burglaries, they don't investigate your mobile phones, you know, they take ages to turn up because they're so overwhelmed. And I keep on going back to that prisons are full, so the police are doing some work, whatever anyone says. But the bottom line on this is very difficult to detect, and the only way you can deal with this is to put dedicated teams on this. When I was Police and Crime Commissioner for Surrey, one of the first ones, we actually started to get a dedicated fly tipping team going. But you need to apply the same kind of resources to this as you would do to organised criminals. So you need to put covert cameras in known locations, surveillance, dedicate officers to stopping vehicles. Have you got a trade waste removal licence?
But again, a lot of people would wonder, is that a priority? When, I mean, again, you mentioned people, you know, police not going to burglaries and the like, but a new study by a fintech company, Nuke from Orbit, they've revealed that they believe that 1 in 3 UK adults have been the victims of phone theft, now up from some like 17% or something back in 2023. I mean, that's extraordinary.
No, I mean, and it's all of you know, if you look at London, when shifts change over in each borough, the open incident list for 999 calls that are not being dealt with is shocking. They'll hand over 20 and 30 calls in some areas because they simply haven't got the resources. And the problem with it is, as legislation's been introduced, people have become more litigious, police have been forced to take officers away more and more from basic frontline activity. Every time we get a child abuse case that's gone wrong, then they put resources into it. And we're in a vicious circle, Julia, and this is a key thing. The detectives are really struggling for 2 reasons. One, no one wants to be a detective anymore in London and most of the other police forces because it's too much career risk that you get the blame.
Yeah.
And secondly, they are hemorrhaging out once they've got their accreditations, they've got some experience, because the private sector wants them to investigate frauds and so on, which the police can no longer do. So you're in a kind of vicious circle all the time. So the fly tippers aren't being caught because there's not enough traffic officers or response officers out there to do it. The local authority enforcement teams have all been cut down. It comes down to government needs to decide, are they going to keep us safe or are they going to keep wasting money on not dealing with illegal immigration properly? Are they going to keep paying benefits to people who are perhaps defrauding the exchequer and so on?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It's a question of those priorities. Kevin Hurley, we've covered a lot of ground there. Very much appreciate you joining us. Former Detective Chief Superintendent of the Met Police there. Thank you for that. Philip Ingram, I mean, this is a lot of frustration. There's always another crime we're talking about going, oh, this isn't being investigated. This is bringing the phone thefts, I mean, the fly tipping. I mean, again, you know, we mentioned Robert Jenner, the Shadow Justice Secretary, about people not paying their tube fares. Okay, that's a London story. But, you know, it happens on trains all the time. I mean, certainly around my way, there's the mess. I live in a nice area, okay, you know, and the mess, the heroin addicts sleeping rough on the street. I know we're all supposed to feel sorry, but I'm not sure this is the right place for them on the street. But literally just setting up camp in doorways of cafes and things, and the difficult and harassing people. There's a general just feeling of lawlessness.
There is around the place. The way to get the police to react, of course, is when you dial 111 or you dial 999, you just say that you've received a hurty tweet on behalf of
or just say someone has misgendered me.
Yes, exactly.
Not only has this man threatened me and not paid his tube fare, there. He has misgendered me.
Yes.
Please come. And he didn't have his pride flag handy.
And you'll get this. The squad will come in very fast.
The awful thing is, you're joking, but I have a horrible feeling it's not a joke. That's the terrible thing. Do get in touch. I'll tell you your thoughts on that conversation. 0344 499 1000. Your thoughts on Donald Trump and those tariffs. And, of course, Nigel Farage being attacked for his fantasy politics and policies by the Prime Minister. This is Talk.
Stop being swooped.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Joining me also, of course, is Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, as he often does. Oh, you always does, pretty much. Very reliable. It's very reliable. Can't get rid of him. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it is always absolutely great to have you join us. Lots more coming this hour, including Donald Trump's tariff war. Is it over? US trade court has blocked Donald Trump's tariffs in a significant setback for the US president. The Manhattan-based Court of International Trade, no, I hadn't heard of it either, ruled that Trump overstepped his authority by using emergency powers to impose those executive orders and impose tariffs across the world. What will that mean for us and the rest of the world? Plus, the Health Secretary Wes Streeting says junior doctors, now known as resident doctors, have lost the public support for strike action in their bid for a bigger pay rise, gone down from over 50% to just under 40% support. Still have a heck of a lot of support for people to go on strike and not provide, I mean, what we know are life-saving services. When junior doctors, resident doctors go on strike, people die. It is really that simple. Plus, Elon Musk has stepped down from his role in Donald Trump's government. Musk said that his scheduled time as a special government employee was coming to an end. He thanked the US president for the opportunity to reduce wasteful spending through his appointment at Doge. Plus, the Environment Secretary Steve Reed has taken more powers to control the planning system over here. He's forcing through 2 new giant reservoirs amid fears over water shortages. Ministers have warned that some areas of Britain face running out of drinking water in just 10 years. Well, yes, if you import millions of more people, and we all have, power showers and washing machines and things. And then you don't build any reservoirs for 40 years. Amazingly, you run out of water, and it can rain for months and months on end, and then we still get a hosepipe ban come June, which is exactly what's going to sodding happen. Anyway, I'll get off my hobby horse on that one, maybe briefly. So let's go turn to Philip Ingram and talk about all of the big stories. Let's start with Donald Trump's Liberation Day tariffs. And the Liberation Day thing was bizarre. This is all based on this idea that there's a balance of trade in a deficit in America because a massively wealthy, very, very populous country somehow miraculously imports more than the average smaller, much poorer country. I mean, this is no beep Sherlock territory. That absurd press conference he gave where he had a board where he was announcing all these countries and their tariffs. Britain got off fairly lightly with just part of the 10% across the board tariffs. We've since done a deal which I don't think has actually come into force yet, even though it was announced, not actually in writing yet, cutting our steel tariffs and the car tariffs, because ours was going to be bigger at one point. It's all got very, very, very confusing. There's a 50% tariff on US goods, that's been suspended. They went up to 145% on China. And you could think, I don't care, I don't live in China or America. And of course, that's now been suspended. They're coming to some sort of arrangement there. But actually, the impact on world trade, the impact on business confidence and planning is huge. The impact on consumers. Tariffs are taxes. They're paid for ultimately by the consumer, whether you're an American consumer or British consumer. Bad for all of us, I would say, unless you're protecting a key industry like farming, steel, car manufacturing. That's understandable, and most countries do that. But it looks like this court has said, you're using emergency powers to give you executive power to make this order that you don't have, because he claimed that it was emergency, that this was a massive hit to the American economy, as if it was a war or a pandemic, which it isn't. And they basically said 3 judges, one of them appointed by Obama, but one by Reagan and one by Donald Trump himself, saying, no, there isn't an emergency. You don't have this power. Trump administration say they're going to appeal it, could go all the way to the Supreme Court. Which way do you think it will go? And do you agree with the ruling? Well,
the tariffs seem crazy. Economically, they're crazy and all the rest of it. And Donald Trump is ruling by diktat. Presidential decree is coming out. And this is the first sign, as I said earlier, of the US Constitution holding the president to account, because he cannot rule like a dictator. Now, it's a relatively low-level court that has said that this is illegal. There are a number of other legal hoops that Trump can go through, and of course the US legal system is politicised. So the 3 judges that we know who've made the decision have come from different backgrounds, appointed by different presidents. But if it gets to the Supreme Court, we know that there's a majority in the Supreme Court who have been appointed by Donald Trump, who are Trump fans, and they could overturn this ruling. And if that doesn't work, Donald Trump will find some other way of trying to get trade back into the United States. The impact's the same. There's a lack of confidence in trade across the world. Businesses are having to plan for the worst case scenario that these come in, and therefore prices are going to go up for everyone as they set the conditions for that. And there's going to be no confidence to invest in businesses, to create new jobs. And that's, you need certainty. I mean, Correct. You do need certainty. I mean, that's going to come into other stories as well. But just briefly, let's talk about Elon Musk. We always knew he wasn't going to stay working in government. He had a finite deadline. It was about a few months, which is if you're not a formal employee, and he basically wants to keep control of SpaceX and Tesla, where that's what's made him the richest man in the world. He's just trying to get a rocket off to Mars, for goodness sake. He's got other stuff to do. I mean, this man multitasks in a way. I mean, I've got to give up Netflix. I'm going to have to give up Netflix and Sudokus to get even a 0.0000001% done as much as Elon Musk gets done in an average day. It's embarrassing, frankly. But he's going to leave the White House. It's damaged his own personal wealth.
could probably afford that. It's damaged the image of his personal reputation, the image of Tesla, among all the lefties who think apparently you have to have the same views as somebody to buy their cars. Weird. Rover, you learnt that one, didn't you? But with your stupid car ads. But no, it was Jaguar, wasn't it? Jaguar.
Yeah.
But it is something. It is a shame because this guy, I think this move fast and break stuff attitude is exactly what government needs. I'd love him. Now he's got a little bit of spare time now. Could he come and work in British government? Do you not think we benefit from a bit of Doge, Elon Musk activity?
I think you need radical thinking across the board, and I've said this about the Ministry of Defence in particular, and it's the same with every government department. It needs to be completely redesigned from the bottom up and from the top down. Because there's so much waste in so many different places.
They're living in sort of a linear world, aren't they? An old-fashioned linear world before AI. Well, let's come on to the front page of the Telegraph today. But Britain's to unleash AI and an army of hackers on Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. You're rolling for the benefit of those listening on radio. The eye roll there was pantomime-esque. £1 billion fund to have an army of hackers going to take on our enemies. What's not to like, Philip?
I think it's brilliant. It's already there.
Because it's been announced by the Defence Secretary, John Healey, today.
It's already there. It was formed in 2020. It's called the National Cyber Force. And it's a combination of the Ministry of Defence, Defence Scientific and Technical Laboratories, MI6 and GCHQ all working together.
Usual suspects.
They've got a big headquarters, and the previous Tory minister said that they're carrying out offensive cyber capabilities and attacks against our enemies to protect the UK. John Healey's just said the same thing, but he said it's going to be under Strategic Command under General Jim Hockenhull, who I know very well, who's the commander of Strategic Command. This seems to be just a resubordination of something that's already existed, dressed up as something new that's coming in his Strategic Defence Review, so that gives him a good soundbite.
We have a lot of announcements coming up about defence spending and strategy coming up over the next month, really.
Yeah.
And the only trouble with all of that is there seems to be announced about funding before you actually get the announcement on what the strategy is. And one of the things I've been saying for years, we need to spend more on defence and tackle the threats from Islamist extremism in the Middle East, but particularly Russia and China across the world. And we just need to upgrade our support, our defence anyway, and long before the invasion of Ukraine. But what I find extraordinary is this inability to think about it as what do we need, and then setting the budget based on that. But I don't think you can say, right, we're going to have 2.5%, or even people talk about in a miracle world 3% of our government spending on defence. We're going to end up in a war. And we are going to be needing to spend 8%.
Yes.
So why don't we just get ahead of the programme and just get on with it now? Yeah. The more you spend on defence now, the less likely you'll have to spend on defence later, and the cheaper it will be, and the more likely you will avoid a war in the first place. I don't understand all this softly idea, but there is that problem, isn't there? People know when their mum's operation has been delayed, but they don't know whether there has been a new tank commissioned. It has a different impact on people's lives in the immediate future.
It does, and I've seen people argue to say the National Cyber Force is dealing with big strategic stuff, and this is a new military bit that's going to look after supporting the military and military operations. I've worked at this sort of level. They all have to work together.
Yeah.
What the cynic in me is saying, what this is doing is resubordinating the National Cyber Force into the Ministry of Defence, so that the numbers that can come out will suggest that John Healey in his Strategic Defence Review is increasing the size of our defence force.
But it's not really.
In different ways, but it's not really.
I mean, again, this
That's
is life
life
or death stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, OK, fair enough. I thought it was just you'd had enough of me.
Yeah. No, it's a brilliant force. It's a brilliant concept. It's definitely needed, but it's already there.
It's already there. OK. There's actually an awful lot of Labour's announcements have been of things that were already on the way, things that Rishi Sunak was planning to do, but then randomly decided to go out in the rain and announce a general election to lose. I mean, utterly bizarre. Makes you wonder whether Labour's got any sensible ideas themselves, which is interesting because today Keir Starmer is going to argue that Nigel Farage's fantasy policies, that's what he says, fantasy policies are going to lead to a Liz Truss-style economic meltdown. He's had the pledges on things like benefits and on tax rates and the things would cause mortgages, bills and rent payments across the country to surge. By the way, they already have, mate. And again, we know that there's lots of absolute lies that talked about Liz Truss's what she did. And by the way, all the things affecting our debt, which caused the meltdown in the markets when Liz Truss did it. We've got higher debt levels now.
Yep.
under Labour. I mean, it's just insane. But Nigel Farage on Tuesday did a big set-piece speech. Parliament's not sitting. They always have a go at him for not being in Parliament when he's doing other things, but he was there making a speech on Tuesday in Westminster. Had a lot of cuts through, talking about reversing the cuts to winter fuel payments, scrapping the two-child benefit cap, and also a plan to slash income tax. The idea of hiking the personal allowance all the way to 20 grand a year, so you wouldn't pay any tax until you were earning 20 grand a year. Institute of Fiscal Studies said that one alone would cost between 50 billion and 80 billion a year. Well, you're going to have to get the tax back from someone else. So, OK, you don't pay tax up to 20 grand, and then we're going to whack you with 40% tax or something. I think that is uncosted. I think that is fantasy, that policy. I think it's actually a policy I wouldn't support. I'm massively opposed to the scrapping of the two-child benefit cap. I do believe that we should reverse that cut to winter fuel payments, and politically it'd be crazy not to do that. But are Nigel Farage's policies any more fantastical than Labour's or the Tories, given A, they support net zero, and B, their manifestos were exposed by us and everyone else, Institute of Fiscal Studies and others, as completely made-up numbers ahead of the last election?
I don't think Nigel cares. He's creating sound bites to increase his popularity.
And most people don't pay attention to the detail.
Exactly. He's getting more airtime than Kemi Badenoch, more airtime than Ed Davey. He's only got 5 MPs, and Keir Starmer is singling him out to attack because he's running scared of him.
And that's the key thing.
That's significant.
I am very aware when the Conservatives, the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, when she makes a speech, she makes an announcement. We often don't even cover it on the show. Because you think, well, they're not in power. No one right now thinks the Tories are going to win the next election, certainly not on their own. I mean, things can change. I mean, never say never in politics. I wrote a piece about Nigel Farage possibly being the next Prime Minister. But it was about Elon Musk, and actually he's got more chance possibly of getting Nigel Farage into power at the next election than getting a rocket on Mars, and a lot of people, they were laughing at me last December. Oh, don't be so silly. Look at the polls now, guys.
Exactly.
Look at the polls now. I do better than Mystic Meg and all the economic and political forecasters on what I think is going to happen.
What are the lottery numbers this weekend?
I've been right about a lot more than they have, and certainly on policy. But again, for me, the key thing is any party leader is still supporting net zero. Lives in an absolute fantasy territory and is bankrupting the country. I'd love to hear from you, though. The Prime Minister accusing Nigel Farage of fantasy policies which will lead to a Liz Truss-style economic meltdown. What are your reactions to that? And in particular, why you think the Prime Minister is attacking Nigel Farage? Barely mentions the Kemi Badenoch and the Tories these days. Is he running scared? Should he be? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. That's the number to call to have your say on that. Of course, you want to talk about Donald Trump and his tariffs or any of the other big stories in the news. The potential doctors' strike. Do they have your support if they went on strike for more pay? 29% pay rise? Really? I'd love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk as well to 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost $1, standard network rate message. Let's talk about Britain's doctors. Resident doctors, as junior doctors are now called, they are being balloted right now by the British Medical Association whether or not they should go on strike to get this 29% next pay rise. 22% before, that was over 2 years. The average they actually got was 4%. But no reforms have actually come into place alongside them, interestingly. But Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, says, look, the latest polls show, you used to have above 50% support for going on strike. You're now down below 40%. You don't have the backing of the public. Do you think that's true?
Well, if it's true, then the current government has got in with no backing of the public, and they're in. So Wes Streeting hasn't got the backing of the public yet. He's still making policy.
Good point.
I think our doctors and our nurses don't get paid enough, and I think they should get paid more. However, holding the country to ransom for 29% at a time when they can see that everything's strained. These are professional people who can see what it is that's going on, and if they're selfishly going out when others can't get it, they can always leave being a doctor and go and be a train driver and earn more money.
Well, they could, and again, we don't want them to do that.
No,
or they could go to Australia or Canada. I mean, I don't think most of them are going to do that. I think one of the problems we've got, GPs working a 3-day week because because they got paid enough that they could get away with doing a 3-day week, and then you've got shortages going of GPs. I mean, that's been a massive, massive issue. Yeah. And it's not just, young mums. It's, it's middle-aged, couples, working as doctors, do we have to do a 3-day week? They go, oh, but it's such a stressful 3 days. Well, it wouldn't be if you worked a 5-day week. And I think if you take on a job like that, that is a 5-day a week job. Not like silly job, not like silly. Well, I mean, my mum was doing it 5 days a week and then being on call at the weekend as well. I mean, not a silly job like what I do. I mean, yapping on the radio is something, but people aren't going to die if they can't, tune in. I mean, you'll feel like you are if you can't tune in, but it's not the same as actually having a health emergency. But we do have an issue. We don't have enough. The NHS has got a shortage of key people. No shortage of net zero officers or DEI officers or HR, but a massive shortage of people who are paid less than all those people, most doctors and nurses. And if we're going to get people in any other field, you're in IT, you can't hire a new IT employee. You have to up your wages and up what you're offering. But why is it any different in the NHS? I don't think people should be doing a job for the love of, God, just sort of being, putting on the uniform. But we need to pay people the money to get them in to actually do the job.
We do, and I think we need more radical thinking. As I've said before, I think to get more people in to do medical degrees and nursing degrees and all that.
We limit the number of people who could do medical degrees in this country madly.
Yeah, we should take the limits off. We should not charge tuition fees for people who want to go in there. All of a sudden, people are going to.
Or you have to do 10 years in the NHS,
and then we'll write off your fees. And then you say, but by not charging, you've got a 10-year penalty or a 10-year return of service. That's something that the military used to do whenever they pay you to go through a degree. You had to do a
But the key thing about a lot of these doctors, they're not the ones, the consultants who are earning a fortune. A member of my family, a lot of the oldies are getting the cataract operations, but being told, like, you've had one cataract operation on the NHS, but you've waited 6 months for it. And then you can have your second one, but it'd be another, basically, 4 to 6 months for the second one. Well, okay, so, and how much would it cost to go private? I don't know, £5,000 or something. And
we'll get them tomorrow.
Friday.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, it's the same doctor. It's the same NHS consultant. And they, most of them get most of their work from NHS patients who can luckily afford to go private there. But that's just not good enough. It's just not good enough. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do get in touch, 0244 499 1000, as there's a number to call. Let's also talk about building reservoirs. I'm all credit to Labour. I do agree with them. I mean, I always say I have no party affiliation. There are parties I feel more of an affinity to, and you'll probably guess which ones they would be by my views on certain policies and certain people. But all credit to the Labour Party saying we are going to rip up a lot of the planning laws to get companies to build more houses, to get through some of these major infrastructure projects like reservoirs. Announcement today that 2 new reservoirs are going to be built, and amid this warning that we could basically run out of drinking water in some areas within the next 10 years because they haven't got enough water stock. It can rain for 9 months in this country, but we don't store enough of the water, and then we end up with having a hosepipe ban for the summer when we get 3 sunny days and all our gardens are completely trashed. It doesn't. I mean, I'm genuinely, you watch your lawn that you've tended for months and months and months, and no, you're gonna have to get the watering can out, get the cups out and pour water on that way. It's insane in a country that is this rainy that we do this. But for years and years, I mean, was it 4 decades or so, we've not built new reservoirs. But the same people who didn't build new reservoirs, the same people who basically imported millions upon millions more people to this country, did they not think that those people might need water?
Hang on, you're asking a government to think and to be sensible.
So painful.
Come on, you've seen too many governments. You know that they don't think, they don't plan ahead, they don't do things that might actually set things up for the future. They're reacting because
you don't think all you get is the grief. If you push through the planning and you upset people. Also, it's not like you're knocking down houses. These reservoirs are in the middle of nowhere.
Well, there's been a few with the flooded villages and they've had to move people out in the
Well, don't build them there then.
Well, exactly. But I think geology dictates where you can put your reservoirs and bits and pieces, and that's why.
But apparently, these are going to take like years to build, which is extraordinary.
And that's why there's no shortage of water in Scotland or Wales, and Northern Ireland's got its own problems because of the pollution that's in Lough Neagh in the centre. But it's Southern England, and a lot of people around the rest of the country don't care what goes on in Southern England, and that's why people sit there with amusement on their face when they hear this.
They do, but it happens across. We've also got massive leaks from the water companies. Then we have those big fines on the water companies. Guess who's going to end up paying those fines?
Not the water companies.
Not the water companies. They're going to pass it on to us. It's insane. None of it works. It really doesn't. Look, there's so much more I want to talk about. Lots more calls coming in on both Keir Starmer attacking Nigel Farage, on Donald Trump, but also actually talk exclusive today about fly tipping. Yeah, it's organised criminals now. This is a multi-million-pound business, paying homeowners, paying to get you to take away the stuff, and then you just go and dump it. Ka-ching, ka-ching. It is big business. We'll talk about that and plenty more coming up. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
I appreciate that people who lose rapid amounts of weight without eating the correct vitamins and proteins and minerals are going to end up with osteoporosis, because obviously, you need all these things. You need protein, and you need calcium, and you need vitamin D to keep your bones healthy. And what happens with these drugs is that it enhances your satiety. So basically, people just don't feel hungry. So they tend to not eat the right foods.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still with us. Coming up, we're going to talk to a former White House staffer about Donald Trump and the tariffs, and of course that ruling from the court, and Elon Musk leaving the White House as well. And also, will we be running out of water in 10 years in some areas, or why on earth have we not built reservoirs before now? We'll talk to an expert on that. Right now, let's get to your calls. 0344 499 1000. Particularly want to hear from you about the Prime Minister accusing Nigel Farage of fantasy policies. He says they will lead to why can I not say that? Liz Truss style, as opposed to Liz Truss tile, economic meltdown. What do you have to say on that? Well, Mark is in Lincolnshire. Mark, good morning to you. What do you want to say?
Hi, good morning, Julia and Duck.
Honestly, every time he does it, I love it. You always smile when you hear me, Duck. What do you want to say, Mark?
I always have a smile when I say it. It's a nice saying.
Isn't it?
It's a nice greeting, anyway.
Yeah.
I am a little bit disgusted with you and Philip this morning, I must admit.
What have we done?
Why aren't you two stuffing your blooming faces this morning? It's National Biscuit Day, for goodness sakes.
What? What? No one told me that.
Shoot the producers.
National Biscuit Day, May 29th.
We're going to be sacking all the production team, all two of them. Do you know what? I'm going to come out on a limb here, Mark, in terms of my more controversial comments. I'm not big on biscuits. I like, if I'm gonna go for something like that, I'll go cake or chocolate.
Well, you could kind of get away with that a little.
I'm just saying, I like sort of unadulterated, like. Okay, favourite bit. No, utterly pointlessly. Favourite biscuit, Mark.
Favourite biscuit, dark chocolate digestive.
Bourbon creams.
I knew bourbon creams.
Yeah.
Very, very old school.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, the flavours change.
I'm going to go freshly baked chocolate chocolate biscuits, where you actually got the lumps of chocolate in.
Yeah.
Do you think chocolate's the thing?
Chip cookies,
Should we get on to a proper topic, Mark?
Yes, let's try that.
So look, you want to talk about Starmer, don't you?
Farage and Starmer, yeah. Well, it's really painful to say that. I kind of agree with Starmer, I kind of don't. Farage's policies aren't particularly fantasy. Well, quite frankly, I'd prefer him to be going a lot harder than he is. He's not somebody I'll be voting for, to be quite honest.
You'd like him to be going harder?
Yes, well, I'm a member of UKIP, Julia, and we actually have some proper core principles on this stuff,
You're saying a lot of people are saying that that Farage is kind of moving a little bit to sort of be all things, all men, and moving to the middle a bit more. Is that a criticism you'd make?
It is, yeah. I mean, the original base of reform pre last year's election, the kind of things that Farage was talking about then that got us all interested, he's now kind of leaving by the wayside. I mean, if I may, I will just relay you with UKIP. There's 6 core missions with UKIP. I
don't think we've got time for the whole UKIP 6 core missions, with all due respect.
I'll give you one very quick one, which is, if this blooming thing will stay open, which is challenge and stop the liberal establishment and its ties to corporations and foreign lobbying who seek to profiteer off the destruction of our culture. Scrap net zero, fight back and say no to Agenda 2030 and globalism.
But I would say Nigel Farage has signed up to all of that as well.
No, I don't think he is.
I think he is. And I have conversations with him off air,
The problem is, Julia, he's forever flip-flopping. He's coming across just like every other politician at this point. He seems to just come out. I mean, number one, why is he always having conferences? He's always having conferences and speeches. It's all he ever does, this guy.
Because you get on telly and then you get to reach more voters.
He would do that anyway. Lots of other MPs get on TV. They don't have to have a conference in order to get on TV, do they?
Don't they just have like an autumn conference and a spring conference? They have a Welsh conference, exactly the same as all the other parties. He's a major party now.
No, they have a lot more than that.
I don't think they're
having events.
I mean, they have events, but well, Donald Trump did that. Worked out quite well for him.
Yeah.
Rallying people, bringing people to the cause.
Yeah, but what's he doing? What's the difference between Donald Trump and Nigel Farage? Donald Trump, when he was running for office, pre-last year's election there, he was giving, he wasn't just coming out with the idea. He wasn't coming out with stuff like, we're going to get rid of the immigrants. He would divulge on that. He would be quite specific about what that meant. Same with,
But then he was a year out. No, but he was a year or 6 months out from an election. You need to have some more specifics. Whereas we are looking about being 4 years out. Let me bring you back. Lots of criticism of Nigel Farage there. Let me bring you back though to why you think Keir Starmer is attacking him and making speeches about a man who's got 5 MPs.
Well, Starmer's doing it because he's obviously quite worried.
Yeah.
That's clear. As I say, I'm a member of UKIP, that's who I'll be voting for. But I'm not an idiot, Julia. I know that the most likely winner is going to be reform. That's why Starmer's scared. That's why he's running scared.
Right.
My concern with it all is, Starmer's saying it's fantasy policies. The way he means it, I agree. As I've just said, I agree. It's the same as far as I'm concerned. However, I believe it's a different kind of fantasy to what Starmer's probably thinking.
Right, interesting.
Starmer's quite an interesting character anyway.
No, he's not.
The one talking about.
No, he's not.
He is an interesting character because he gets a lot of people will say, "Oh, he's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing."
No, he's not an idiot.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
No, I don't think he does. I think he's a very clever man who's got absolutely no real vision of any sort. I'm going to have to leave it there, Mark, because I want to squeeze another caller on before we get to a break. Mark, appreciate that call. Very interesting stuff. Interesting listening for the Reformites. Ben is on the line. He's in Bristol. Ben, you want to talk about fly tipping, this Talk exclusive showing how fly tipping has become the new county lines with basically organised criminals cashing in on the waste racket.
It's a great show, Julia. And, I mean, you get a lot of it around here. I work out delivering in the country. You see it all the time. It's a scar on our nation. It's an affront, isn't it? It's 2 fingers up to law, to order and just common decency.
Yes.
And I listened to your guy talking, and with due respect, it could be so easy to catch these people. All you got to do is answer a few ads. I want some stuff clearing, see who comes round and follow them.
Sting operation.
Where I live, it's not exactly rocket science, is it? I mean,
and it'll be the same people. It's not each bag isn't dropped by one different guy, is it?
It's not difficult to do. You can just try a few times with the kind of resource. But the thing is the resource, Julia. Do you know where I live in Bristol? You get a lot of fly tipping. Do you know how many speed traps they put out in the 20 and 30 zones a week in Bristol and Somerset?
They've got the results. Tell me.
I've actually researched it. 360 a week.
I've round my way. They've made a massive, big. I mean, all intents and purposes, a dual carriageway. They've made it 20 miles per hour, camera after camera after camera. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Look, nobody wants to have people speeding crazy, but that shows where they're... If they even half that and put it into fly tipping, you could get all of them within 6 months and put these guys in jail. You do fly tipping, you do a year in jail. No early release, nothing.
No, exactly. It's always about where there's a will, where there's a way, isn't it? That is the crucial thing. Very good point there, Ben. Thank you very much indeed. Fly tipping, I mean, it is everywhere. I mean, we get fly tipping by people who live in our street, for goodness sake. I mean, people, it's just a genuine, what a street looks like, how much litter there is, people's rubbish bins out, and all that stuff is such a sign of whether people care about their local community and have the basic level of respect for their neighbours. But Philip Ingram, you live in Birmingham.
Yeah.
You're actually not. You're under the slightly different counties. You're not affected by the bin strike. That's still ongoing, is it not?
It is still ongoing.
I mean, it hasn't been in the news quite so much.
And it's been the local news. The fly tippers have been abusing the fact that people have left their rubbish in the streets and they're putting their rubbish onto
adding to it. But also, I'm assuming they're also companies saying, "Hey, if organised criminals, we'll take your rubbish away, so you can finally get your rubbish taken away," and then they just go and dump it somewhere. Well, you could have done it yourself.
And a few other streets, yes.
Yeah.
And they're charging people. It is organised crime.
It is, absolutely. And again, those criminals are using that money for other things as well. The drugs, the prostitution, the people smuggling. That's the thing you tackle. There's always that, well, we haven't got the resources for that. No, but they're also the people sending out the organised shoplifters as well. They're doing it all. Get the people doing it.
And then linked to terrorism and everything else.
Absolutely. It's so painful, isn't it, when this stuff isn't dealt with. It's not low-level crime. There's no such thing as low-level crime. It's amazing. 11:35 is at the time. Coming up next, we are going to be talking to Matthew Bryser, former White House official, about what's going on in the States. Those Trump tariffs, are they over or not? This is Talk, Home of Common Sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Thanks for your calls, your texts coming. I haven't got any texts yet. I've got to them. I really must read them. Some of those out to you. But the Prime Minister has been is accusing Nigel Farage in a speech today of fantasy policies that will lead to a Liz Truss-style economic meltdown. He's just started giving speeches, giving remarks during a Q&A at a business in the Northwest. He's rolled his sleeves up. You know what it means when a politician rolls his sleeves up. Oh, it shows I mean business and I'm down with the common man. It's put a suit on, put your tie back on, mate. I hate it when they do that.
We need Donald Trump to tell him to put a suit on.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
disrespecting. You should be wearing a suit.
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, let's talk about Donald Trump with Matthew Bryser, my next guest. He's a former White House official who was with the Obama administration and joins us now to talk about those Trump tariffs. Are they going to carry on or aren't they? A very good morning to you, Matthew.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining. You're sounding very chirpy, probably more chirpy than most people in the White House right now. Although I have a funny feeling a lot of people working in Trump's White House would be quite happy to get rid of these Liberation Day tariffs. We had that big announcement. It was last month. Feels like a lifetime ago. These huge tariffs on pretty much any country, and not even all countries that had a balanced trade deficit with the US. Often it was countries that didn't have a balanced trade deficit, like we barely do, and basically massive tariffs. It went up to 145% with China. He's talked about 50% with the EU, big tariffs on Canada and Mexico. It's all changed. Some suspended, some not. Some deals to ratchet them down with Keir Starmer of the UK. Not even sure those are coming to force yet. No one knows where they stand. No one knows what the situation is. Businesses are ground to a halt. Massive impact on the economy. Massive impact on prices for a lot of people as well. Then yesterday, a trade court in New York basically ruled that actually he can't go ahead with these tariffs. What was that ruling and why is it so significant?
It's really amazing because tariffs are, as you were just describing, the center of President Trump's international economic policy. And he has said for years, I love tariffs. So what happened was that this trade court, an obscure court, 3-person panel, so 3 judges, one appointed by, in the Reagan administration, one in the Obama administration, and one under Trump.
Yeah.
They ruled that the Congress delegated authority to a U.S. president to impose tariffs only under emergency situations, essentially. And this is not an emergency situation. Therefore, Trump does not have the authority to impose tariffs. Rather, only the Congress does.
Yeah, basically, he's same as he's actually said, for instance, used these emergency powers to, for instance, deport people and close the border on the basis there's an invasion, warlike invasion of the country, using the executive order powers there. And a lot of people are saying he's just, he's taking too many powers that the president under the Constitution doesn't really have. Look, we know that the White House is going to challenge this. They're going to appeal this. It could, very quickly end up in the Supreme Court. How do you think the Supreme Court would rule on this?
Yeah, so the Trump administration already appealed this injunction, and then it's going to appeal the case as well. And it will, I think it'll certainly go to the Supreme Court. How the Supreme Court will rule, I personally, it's just a guess, right? But I believe the Supreme Court will likely rule against the administration because it seems pretty straightforward that the United States is not facing an economic emergency in trade.
Well, that's the key thing, isn't it? His view on tariffs, and again, out of kilter with lots of Democrats, but also with a huge number of Republicans in Congress and Republican voters in terms of who've been very much afraid of free trade. Tariffs are taxes. I don't know how anyone can say, as Donald Trump did, tariffs, my favourite word in the English language. It shouldn't be, mate. We know that ultimately they get passed on to the consumer. Now, he did have this argument that he wanted to base. There were 2 or 3 different arguments. One was he was just going to, force all these companies to, to come back onshore. Don't make your products over in India or China. Make them here or Canada or Mexico. Make them here in the United States, and then we'll get the jobs back. That's great, apart from the fact that, of course, labour costs in the United States compared to somewhere like India are so ridiculously different. That's just not tenable, and people need to be sure those tariffs are going to stay for 20 years to make it worthwhile to build the factory. We've had a bit of onshoring, but not that much. Also, he'd bring in a load of money, billions and billions, towards paying for things in America by imposing those tariffs. And the other was that he was going to use it as leverage to get to 0 tariffs with other countries. Now, all 3 of those things might be good for America, but all 3 are, as been pointing out, mutually exclusive. You can have one, but you can't have the other 2. You simply can't do it. He hasn't achieved any of them, has he?
No, not yet. It's still very early. He made a point earlier this week that he's not looking for a deal with the European Union. He's not negotiating. He just wants to impose tariffs just for the sake of it. And as you said, Julia, you can't achieve all these objectives at the same time. If the goal is to raise revenue, that means more money out of the pockets of American consumers into the federal government. But if that's the goal, then if you bring back manufacturing into the United States, then you lose that ability to use a tariff. So I think that at the end of the day, what you said at the very beginning is right on target, which is that there are many people in his administration and in his White House who don't like this unorthodox economic policy. Yeah. And in fact, at the end of the day, he's creating such a mess, especially in the U.S. bond markets. aka like Liz Truss did, that he may welcome at the end of the day that the court will free him from this albatross that he placed around his own neck.
And again, we know one of the big critics of this was Elon Musk, of course, as a car manufacturer, who worked, running DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. We'll come on to him in just a moment. But in terms of where, how this ends, will it take weeks? Will it take months? I mean, if he can get the injunction overturned quickly, if the appeal process and up to the Supreme Court, could that be years, or could it be done, by the end of June?
I don't think there's any way first of all, the Supreme Court will not hear the case before the end of June. So it will, if it goes that high, it will be months. If the lower court overturns the injunction, then we're kind of back to that abnormal normality. But I think it'll take a long time and we'll be in limbo for a while. And, what happens often with any presidential administration, especially the Trump one, is, issues are really hot for a while and then they go away.
And again, I'm thinking, when the story was on the radio this morning, I woke up and I'm like, God, wait a minute, what was the latest deal that we did? Did those tariffs even come into force in terms of the lower levels? I mean, there's so much confusion on any given day. What are the tariffs in any individual country? And again, if you don't work in export and import, and if you don't make cars or make steel, for instance, you're not really going to know or think it affects you. But of course, there will be and has already been a worldwide impact, because this disruption to trade, like when there's a pandemic in China and they close down a load of factories, there is a massive impact on world trade when two of the biggest economies in the world go to war economically.
Yeah, there's also a massive impact simply on U.S. investors and companies, because if you run a company, you don't know, do I ramp up production overseas in my factory, or do I have to begin planning a multi-year move of our
car manufacturers here in the UK literally cutting all exports to the United States until they know what's going on.
That's the rational decision. What else can you possibly do? I mean, it's crazy, the situation for U.S. auto manufacturers, where the U.S. auto manufacturing industry in North America is fully integrated with parts that are produced in Mexico and in Canada. And the U.S. has free trade agreements with both countries, or a free trade agreement. So everything that's happening will disrupt the manufacturing of the U.S. auto industry and is against the treaty.
Yeah, it is quite bizarre, isn't it? As I said, Elon Musk was one of the critics of that, not just privately but publicly. But he's going to be leaving the White House. And we always knew his job was temporary, running the Department for Government Efficiency, DOGE. We also knew that, let's face it, that Donald Trump doesn't take criticism from anybody. You have to sort of he's almost like a child. You have to gently sort of coax round to your point of view. It's where we are with Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. But we also know, and I said this before when he was appointed, I said he won't last long, even if, whatever the term is, he was going to be in office. He won't last long, simply because he gets headlines more than Donald Trump on occasion, and the Donald doesn't like that.
That's true. I think you and I both made that point together. I'm sure you've made it many other times. It's true. Trump doesn't like that criticism. And there were workarounds. He was a so-called special government employee, Musk, and so he was supposed to have to leave after, I think it's 130 days. Yeah. But there would have been workarounds. So I think, part of it is that part of the reason he's leaving is that, maybe a clash with a larger-than-life personality, Donald Trump. But I think he really is against these tariffs. He doesn't believe that's the way to drive an economy, and he sees his influence is waning. Because he can't have an impact on that debate. And DOGE really hasn't found many cuts in the U.S. government.
Haven't they? I mean, they were early on, there was a lot of talk, but a lot of those people kind of were reinstated. But, I mean, have they not, when you say you haven't found many cuts, what numbers are we talking?
Well, about 174 billion, and he had said we were going to find like 2 trillion. And many of those, it's now appearing, you can't really trace back through accounting methods whether they're real. Some have been double counted. So I think he's really disappointed and frustrated. And I mean, Tesla is in big trouble without him at the helm, and with him in politics the way it is, as people stop buying his cars. Yeah,
I mean, there is that, isn't there? Also, the small matter of trying to get a rocket to Mars. And I imagine running Tesla and running SpaceX are each on their own a full-time job. And so adding 2 full-time jobs and then that job in the White House. I have to say, I mean, do not support anything that he was doing at DOGE. There was a lot of, bull in a china shop stuff, but you know that your government, I mean, ours is pretty darn bad, but your government is outrageously bloated and you are in trillions of debt. The Americans are still funding that debt, repayments on a huge scale. Something had to be done, didn't it?
Absolutely, and you'd be hard pressed to find any serious U.S. federal government employee who would disagree. I mean, and it's the biggest organization in history on the planet, so of course there's
bigger than the NHS in the UK.
It is bigger. I mean, the whole federal government.
Wait a minute. How many pride flags have you got, though? That's how we measure these things now.
I don't know. Good question, but it's enormous. But the problem was the way Doge went about it with these, in some cases, maybe illegal firings of people who had labor protections, and a haphazard approach that didn't think about what's the mission of the organization you're going to cut and how can you perform the mission more efficiently.
Okay.
That wasn't the
Very interesting. Matthew Bryce, always good to talk to you, former White House official under the Obama administration, certainly sympathetic supporter of Donald Trump. But Philip Ingram, I still think there are stuff that, certainly Elon Musk has tried to do. And the fact that you can't fire people in government, that's a bit of a giveaway, isn't it?
Very much so.
That's why it keeps growing and growing and growing, but getting less useful stuff done.
Yeah, very much so. I, many years ago, helped reform the army in the UK, and we cut lots of capability, but we cut lots of capability because we found that all it was doing was feeding itself with things. My self-licking eye, Solly.
And we took go back and listen to that. It's very complicated.
We took it away, and it actually made everything much more efficient. But we saved billions.
Every organisation, whether private or public, but particularly in the public sector, has a whole bunch of people, and indeed a whole departments, who actively, it's not they don't get anything done, they actively stop everyone else from getting stuff done. You know who you are. 11:48 is the time. Up next, we'll talk about getting things done in terms of building reservoirs. Why don't we build more reservoirs? Will the country really run out of clean water in 10 years? In some areas, we're going to talk to the founder of We Own It, a campaign group against privatisation and for public ownership. They're up next. This is Talk.
Yeah, I think Rachel Reeves, the architect of her own downfall, which I think is what you allude to, Mike.
Yes.
I mean, they came in on the back of wanting more economic growth, and yet sort of spent the first 6 months talking the economy down, then whacking it with a huge amount of tax and spend, £76 billion a year of tax and spend, which will mean businesses have less to invest, which is clearly where you get growth from. And now you've got all this red tape coming down the track in the employment rights bills.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, to me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Big announcement from the government today. They're going to be building 2 new reservoirs. I mean, they won't be in office when those new reservoirs are actually built, but they're the first ones in decades, amid warnings that within the next 10 years, some areas of the country could actually run out of fresh drinking water if we don't build them. I'm certainly just getting fed up of having rain most of the year and then being told I need a hosepipe ban because no one thought to build some reservoirs to contain all the water that pours onto our rainy island most of the year. Well, let's talk about this with Kat Hobbs, who's the founder of We Own It. They're a campaign group against privatisation and for public ownership of everything from the NHS, schools, water, energy and rail. Very good morning to you, Kat.
Good morning, Julia.
I'd say most of those are already in public ownership, aren't they? But there we are. We'll talk about that. Do you support these new reservoirs being built?
So great to have new investment, but the question is, we've had water privatisation. It was supposed to deliver new investment. It really hasn't. Now the government is stepping in. We haven't had a reservoir built for 30 years. They're stepping in. If they can step in to do what's needed, to take control of our resources, to do what's needed for the country, why can't they step in to deliver public ownership of water, which is what 8 out of 10 people want?
That's a different thing from changing the planning laws so that they can basically override local objection. Because everyone says, like, we need more houses, we need more energy, we need more water and reservoirs, but no one wants it. New pylons, whatever, but no one wants it near them. So they're simply changing the rules, so they've got the power to allow that to go ahead and to approve those. That's not the same as owning the water company.
Well, that's an issue, but they're also rubber stamping the water company's plans to increase all of our bills by 35%. So they've already had, these water company shareholders, they've already had £78 billion in dividends flowing to these companies around the world, mostly foreign ownership. And that's not money coming into the UK, going to shareholders. And they've had this debt mountain that they've built up of £64 billion, our expense. We've had Thames Water starting to crumble, and then the government propping it up, again at the expense of Thames Water region households. So we're all paying 35% extra. Effectively, it's a privatisation tax to prop up this system where we try to pretend that a natural monopoly like water can actually be a market.
Yeah, this is one of the issues, isn't it? Like, I'm largely in favour of the market producing better results for consumers. So you've got a choice, and people have to up their game. We've seen that with mobile phone contracts and the like. When one offers free roaming in Europe, the other ones get forced to do it as well. But as you say, where you've got the pipes that come into my home, the pipes in my street. I mean, if I moved from Thames Water to, I don't know, Southern Water, if that was possible, it wouldn't be a new set of pipes and a new set of water. It's the same sodding stuff.
Exactly.
I think a lot of people are very supportive of that, and the same with the gas and the electricity. However, what most people want when they say I want nationalised, they remember back to when it was all cheaper then. One of the reasons why a lot of our bills are going higher, not particularly the case of water, but is actually, again, it's lack of infrastructure, it's lack of investment, and a lot of that does cost money, and it would be the taxpayer paying for it if they were nationalised in the first place. So we're going to end up paying for it anyway, aren't we?
We pay for it anyway. The difference is when you have privatisation, you have effectively a tax on top of that, because as well as paying for the infrastructure, you're paying for the dividends of shareholders, and you're paying for that debt that they're building up at your expense, which is more expensive. The cost of investing with the private sector is more expensive than doing it through the public sector. But exactly as you say, we don't get a choice. And so what we're seeing is that across the board, we've had this ideological experiment saying we have to have markets in everything. Now, private companies, I know where you're coming from, Julia, they can do lots of things where you have a real market. But these are areas, these core things that people want to take back control over, and there's no market.
Well, there's a similar thing with rail, isn't there? Because if you want to get a high-speed train, there's only one company on the west coast or east coast mainland or to the west country. There's only one company that's operating those high-speed rail companies. And then if you want to get like a short hopper, that's a different company. But it's not a competition as such in terms for the same product. Like your organisation is called We Own It. Your argument is we already owned it. It was sold off. How would you get it all back?
So it varies. Where you have contracts, for example, the rail franchises, the government is bringing some of the railway back into public ownership right now. You can end a contract, bring it into public ownership. Where you have to buy back the assets because we sold them off wholesale, we sold off the family jewels, the crown jewels. That's a little bit more complicated, but it's not that complicated. Right now, the government's holding a review looking at water. They've excluded the idea of public ownership, which is bonkers because that is how 90% of the world runs water. Now, what you need to do is you need to actually hold the water companies to what they've said they'll deliver, penalise them when they pour raw sewage into our rivers and seas, when they leak water out of our pipes, when they fail to invest, as they have failed to invest for 30 years, and actually make it so that these water companies aren't a profitable market opportunity. You bring down the market value and then you can buy them back. And if you look at Thames Water, Steve Reed, the Environment Secretary, could already have taken Thames Water into public ownership. The shareholders were saying that it was worthless. The debt could have been slashed in half. Instead, he loaded that cost onto us, the bill payers, which is absolutely outrageous.
I mean, you mentioned
he had a chance to do it.
Thames Water, of course, covers a fifth of the population of this country. It's not just those, just living in London. It's a fifth of the country. I think a lot of people have an awful lot of sympathy for what you have to say, and certainly when you've got foreign ownership, it's big, big equity firms, or actually weirdly foreign governments always have, and foreign companies have a stake in these companies, and they don't do the investment they should. They've got massive leaks. I mean, huge amount of water is lost to leaks. We've certainly
20%,
got a huge amount. I mean, way more than I'm using on my lawn is going out leaking into my road. But also, not building the infrastructure, not building the reservoirs, at the same time as handing massive dividends and massive big bonuses. It should be a simple case. You have to have done all these things, and then if there's any profit left over, then you can pay some shareholders. I mean, I'd certainly want more controls on that. Kat Hobbs, I think you've been rather persuasive, I have to say. Kat Hobbs, founder of We Own It. Thank you very much for joining us. Philip Ingram, there is a natural monopoly in a lot of things, and if there isn't a market, I don't get a choice over what Thames Water charges me. You don't get a choice of what Yorkshire Water or wherever charges someone living in Yorkshire. So it to a certain extent, it can't be privatised, can it, in a meaningful way?
Well, exactly. And whenever there's no investment going into the local infrastructure, but there are huge dividend payments going out to shareholders, we're getting it wrong. Now, everyone then thinks that, everyone then thinks that dividend payments out to shareholders means that other people are putting big wads of cash in their back pockets. A lot of those shareholders are the pensions that people are investing into. They're not individuals that are sitting there in their country piles.
Yeah. But it's interesting, we didn't get onto it with Kat, but the rail, energy, water, I think a lot of people think are very obvious, but you're talking about also they want everything to be public, all schools, and keep the NHS publicly owned. I mean, no one's actually suggesting privatising it, and frankly, I think they should be. I think that's the number one solution, because you can easily have competition, and actually competition in schools, I mean, is absolutely vital to keep the standard of schools up.
Our NHS, 50% of it, over 50% of it, is private.
Dental, GPs.
Dental, GP practices, pharmacies, eye care. It's all provided by your private, and it was designed that way. It's never been in public ownership.
No, that's very, very interesting. And again, we see when people talk, it's one of the attacks on Nigel Farage, isn't it? He wants to, move to this sort of this national insurance or social insurance policy.
Works well in Germany.
Well, exactly. You're comparing it to comparing our NHS to countries. Most of Europe has that, and they don't have anything like the waiting list we've got. I mean, in France, there's some new waiting lists because of incompetence and again post-lockdown. But I mean, again, that's just not going to be the killer argument that it used to be. It really isn't, 24 days to save our NHS and all of that. Anyway, 11:59 is the time. We're going to head into the news. After that, we're going to be talking to former Conservative Party leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. Love to hear his thoughts on what the Prime Minister's been saying about Nigel Farage and his own party. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. This is Talk, the home of common sense. 2 minutes past 12 is the time. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or you're on smart speaker or watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for joining me. Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, is still with us as well. And coming up in this hour, I'm going to talk more about that US trade court blocking Donald Trump's tariffs, the Manhattan-based Court of International Trade ruled that Trump overstepped his authority by using emergency powers to put tariffs across the world. But what happens next? There's an appeal against the injunction, an appeal against the decision. It'll end up in many months' time going to the Supreme Court, but what impact will that have? Also, Britain spending £1 billion on AI and a hacking team to give the armed forces more power online to target hostile forces, including Russia and China. That's an announcement from the Defence Secretary John Healey today. Although, as Philip Ingram, he knows about these things, as pointed out, actually it's been in existence since 2020. We'll find out about that. But AI being absolutely crucial and in the news all the time right now. So we're going to be joined by the award-winning TV director Brian Klein, talk about his brand new novel, The Spider Covenant, which explores how AI technology is capable of creating undetectable deepfakes, and why reality right now is even more scary than the fictional book that he has written. He's also the former basic director for pretty much all of the Top Gear series. He's got some interesting tales to tell. We can't wait to talk to Brian Klein in a few moments' time. Plus, Gary Lineker back in the news. Once again, not talking about the stuff he knows about, like football, but he's joined the likes of the actor Benedict Cumberbatch, singers Annie Lennox and Dua Lipa, and 300 other public figures, the usual virtue signalling lot, to call on Keir Starmer to end the UK's complicity in Gaza. Celebrities, of course, need to end their complicity with Hamas, don't they? We'll talk about that coming up as well. All that coming up, as I say. The Prime Minister is still on his feet, making a speech in North West England at a business where he's seemed to be focusing an awful lot of his speech attacking Nigel Farage. He made a big set-piece speech on Tuesday where he talked about various different benefits and tax policies. He's been accused of fantasy policies by the Prime Minister, who has taken off his tie and his jacket and rolled up his sleeves, and we know what that means, don't we, my fellow voters? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. Philip, politician taking off his jacket, rolling up his sleeves, giving a major speech on camera where he's attacking, he's got a majority of, he got 400 MPs, got a majority of 160, I think it is. I've got loads of the Gaza MPs out. He's in power for the next 4 years, unless, God knows what could happen to force him out, minimum another 4 years. And he's attacking a guy who's got another 4 MPs.
So five MPs?
Yeah, but 5 in his including him.
Yeah.
Why do you think Keir Starmer's focusing on Nigel Farage?
Well, it's interesting. The Labour Party didn't give any detail whenever they were running for the last election what they were going to produce.
They didn't want to tie their hands.
They didn't want to tie their hands. They just attacked the Tories and said, we're different, we're going to do it better. Nigel Farage is now turning around and saying, look at this different party that you've elected in. Labour are terrible and falling apart. You can't keep them in. We're going to do it different. We're going to do it better. And therefore, he's suffering the tactics that he used first of all, and he's running scared.
Yeah, indeed. Well, let's talk about this with former Conservative Party leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith MP. A very good afternoon to you, Sir Ian.
Morning, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. It took me months to make that transition. Still not quite made it regularly. It's very interesting that the Prime Minister, whether it's Prime Minister's questions or in set-piece speeches now, his attacks seem to all now be focused on the leader of a party with just 5 MPs, as opposed to the leader of the official opposition, Kemi Badenoch. It does look like Keir Starmer regards the threat as being Nigel Farage, not Kemi Badenoch. Is he right about that?
Well, at this stage, my party is still languishing in the after effects of what was a complete mess we got into before the last election. It's only just less than a year since we had the election. So I think that position is the bit that we have to get out of. But on terms of Labour we had a really bad local elections. We knew it was going to be bad. It was as bad as we could possibly have thought about it. All the stuff that came about, yeah. But Labour were the party that had just made government with 170 majority. You would expect Labour, under normal circumstances, to have advanced their position during those local elections because they were peculiarly high watermark for the Tories. Instead of which, they actually lost councillors and lost council seats. And so the problem that Labour's got, which is now reflected in the polling, is that in actual fact, their result was really about the split on the right of politics between Conservative and Reform, and many of those were in the seats that they have held historically, what we call the Red Wall. So why is Starmer making a speech like this? Because his Red Wall MPs are running very scared now about the effects of reform in their constituencies. And so this is the problem that he faces. And so he's decided to try and turn his attention to reform. And there are elements of reform which certainly need questioning, but certainly that's the fear factor that runs through.
Well, it's interesting. The Prime Minister said that Nigel Farage has set out billions upon billions of completely unfunded spending and would blow up the economy all over again. He said precisely the sort of irresponsible splurge that sent your mortgage costs, your bills and the cost of living through the roof. It is Liz Truss all over again. Said his plans for the UK economy was a mad experiment. It's a bit rich from a party leader who is basically sort of pushing net zero policy, something that your party has been pushing for years as well, although Kemi Badenoch is now at least rolling back on that right now. But it's not possible for any party leader to make any claims about another party having sort of unrealistic spending and tax plans if they're supporting the trillion pound plus cost of net zero, which is totally unachievable, and those costs, that's a minimum cost to the economy.
Yeah, first of all, I've always been opposed to this statutory target for net zero. I thought it would lead, whenever you get into kind of religious ideology in politics, it always ends in tears. And this will end in tears. It's already ending in tears. We managed to get an amendment, by the way, on the Great British Energy Bill to stop the UK government importing goods made by slave labour from China. They were turning a blind eye to that. Can you imagine? Such is the religious zeal to get to net zero. They do not care, or they weren't caring, about the fact that China was using forced labour to make their arrays and sending them to the UK, and the UK was buying them because they were cheaper. That's how bad it gets when you get into this zeal. And so we managed to stop that finally. So that will actually cost them more now as a result of that. But we should just get rid of the ridiculous targets we've got on this. If we're going to get to net zero, the question really is we need to do it, if we're going to do it, in a way that doesn't damage people's lives, put costs up to them, and at the same time do away with our own energy resources. We have oil and gas. We are sitting on an island of oil and gas. America uses its shale gas and it's got its energy costs way down below ours, and as a result of that their economy has been growing. Ours is static because our cost of energy is the highest in the developed world, well, the highest in the world right now, and that is the base cost for everything we do with our lives. And what this government fails to understand is that you have to make a choice between whether people's costs need to be down or whether your zeal for this ideology is such that you must get there first. Less than 0.5% of all global emissions, if that's their concern, emanate from the UK. Nobody will notice anything that we do.
I'd like us to have more global emissions because we have manufacturing. I think that would be a good thing. I'm not even saying that to be confident. I genuinely think the only reason we've got low emissions is because we've basically cracked up shop and shipped everything off to be done in India and China. You mentioned energy costs.
By the way, gas, oil and coal.
Yeah, exactly. But you mentioned, of course, high energy costs, and this leads me on to another topic, AI, and we're going to be talking to an author of a book just talking about AI deepfakes and the threat that they pose. And there's no doubt at all, a lot of people saying the future is AI. It uses a huge amount of energy. No one in their right minds would set up an AI business in the UK, given our high energy costs. But an interesting announcement from the Defence Secretary, John Healey, today, ahead of the Defence Strategy Review next week, talking about a sort of £1 billion fund to use sort of AI and an army of hackers here in the UK for the British military to protect us from cyber attacks, AI attacks by Russia, by China, by Islamist extremists, Iran, you name it. Philip Ingham, who's expert in this field, pointed out that already existed under a Tory government set up actually in 2020. But we should be spending money on that side of things, should we not?
Yeah, we have to. Well, let's just face it. We need to defend our country, and defense is tanks, aircraft, guns. It's also now cyber. The fact is that cyber is, in many cases, more effective in what's called the interim period between full-out war and peace, because you can get into people's systems and you can disrupt their daily lives. I mean, the reality is that if you are smart, and a huge amount of this comes from Russia and China, then if you get into the systems of the free market, then what you do is disrupt everybody's lives. You create chaos, as we've seen with Marks and Spencers and co., such that they can't open their online services again for the moment. And all of that is caused by very simple viruses that are put into their system. So when you get into the more sophisticated areas where you can copy people using AI, you can make your sounds and your signatures look exactly the same as them, now you're in real trouble. And I have to tell you that I've been banging on about this for some time. But China has done something even more than that. They have brought together genomics with AI. They have the two biggest resources for that. BGI is the biggest.
Explain what genomics is.
Genomics is about your gene code. It's what they did was, of course, they very cleverly, BGI, sold the lion's share of most of the COVID tests that we used here. Chose China.
They gave us COVID and then bankrolled it.
And then also, by the way, they did all the pregnancy testing too. And again, we've been moaning about the fact that British government too easily allowed Chinese services in this respect. They were allowed legally to keep 15% of all of the gene codes that they picked up through those tests and take them back to China. Ooh. That is how stupid we have been. So now they're working on all of that in China, and what they are looking at is what are the propensities for disease and resistance in different ethnic groups. And therefore this will weaponize their ability next time to target this. And this is they're using AI to develop this faster. I've warned about this. I've written about it.
Absolutely. Again,
absolutely nothing.
But wait, this goes back. I mean, again, I feel the same way about us selling off, most of London to the Middle East potentates as well. These people are not our friends. These are not our allies. We have been facing, cyber war and attacks from Russia and from China for many years, and real war in Europe, in Ukraine. China still, the threat to Taiwan is still absolutely huge, and I find it extraordinary that we've been. Our politicians, allowing, let's have Huawei, let's allow any Chinese company, all Chinese companies being beholden, required by law to give any information the Chinese government wants and to act on their behalf as and when directed. I mean, that is literally a requirement. So there's no such thing as an independent Chinese-owned company to allow them to, let's go get involved in our 5G or get involved in building our nuclear power projects. There's been some concern, it's been seen in the States, of things like even selling us the solar panels. But so if we're going to become incredibly reliant on solar panels and wind turbines for our electricity in this country, they're still talking about 95% of our electricity reliant on renewables. I mean, again, insane. I think unachievable, but insane, especially when we saw those blackouts in Spain and Portugal recently, which was a bit of a giveaway, you'd think, and a wake-up call, but not to the ideologues and the religious zealots. But there is actually a sort of a sleep switch, a cut-off switch, which is contained within that solar technology, which the Chinese manufacturers can just go click, and then they stop working. We are in danger of literally giving up our ability to get anything done in this country to a hostile state. We know is a hostile state. Why do our politicians do that? Because I always think follow the money. I believe in incompetence more than conspiracy. But is it just that so many people are so beholden? China in particular throws money at universities, at government departments, everything, and that actually they just get beholden to the Chinese state in the same way that they brought up Africa and the Caribbean and South America. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, you could say that they're also stupid. The reality is...
Go for the obvious explanation.
I believe when the evidence is in front of you, as somebody once said, when the evidence changes, you change your mind. Yeah. And we haven't changed our mind when the evidence now is overwhelming. China has an objective, which is to undermine and destroy democracy and human rights. They don't believe in it. They think that this is an aberration of 200 years. Their form of government is the only form of government, and they want to become what I'd refer to as the Middle Kingdom. President Xi has said this, and by the Middle Kingdom I mean the center of everything. Yeah. And to do that, they have to overtake America, which they were on track to do until COVID, but they're still on track, both economically and in terms of the military. Their military build-up now is staggering. Any one shipyard in China now builds more naval vessels in a year than the whole of the United States does. One. They are 130 times the capability of the US to build naval ships. These little facts that we keep dropping in to tell everybody, we are losing a war that we don't even know that we're fighting. And China knows very well, and they use every organ. And of course, the marketplace, they have destroyed the free market. They subsidize their companies, they use slave labor, they undermine the private sector elsewhere. The result is we've lost all our telecoms business. We've now got 3 Western companies that are just struggling to get done. Huawei and those other Chinese companies pretty much took over the world. And all of this has been happening in plain view. Instead, we've still got a government now that thinks going to China, each one of these ministers that trails
with a begging bowl.
Looking pathetic. Here's a little piece of information. China has done no major FDI, foreign investment, direct investment, since 2017. Our lot think you can go over there and get them to put it in.
Well, the last lot went off. They got back. They came back with like £1 billion over 6 years. Like, really?
No, they didn't actually. Yeah, that was just. It was actually HSBC that engineered that, and that was, I think, offsetting their paperclip costs for a period. It was tiny. It was risible. It wasn't an investment.
Can I just bring you just for fun? I mean, there's so much. There's another 20 topics I'd like to talk to you about, but I haven't got time. It's such an interesting conversation. By the way, Philip Ingram, who knows his potatoes on this, is nodding along to a lot of that, and you've been, you say, banging that drum for a very long time, and I think 100% right about it. US tariffs. This US court basically saying, look, it's illegal. You take on executive powers in an emergency situation. There isn't an emergency situation. Having a trade deficit with the rest of the world isn't an emergency, quite obviously. But a lot of that, think of the tariffs on Chinese goods. Again, you say subsidised Chinese goods. I think to a certain extent, welcomed by some people, because actually, you have to have tariffs against a country that is, as you say, using slave labour and producing these items so much more cheaply because they've got state subsidies which we're not giving. It's not a fair playing field. What do you make of that tariff decision by the courts, and what do you make of the tariff war generally?
Well, I just come back from Washington last week, where I was there talking to Republicans and Congress and everything else, trying to figure out what they were up to. But what's interesting about all of this is the court, let's separate it for a second. The court judgment is about the misuse of what is executive power.
Yeah.
And I've talked to a couple of people in the States, and they already knew that what White House has done in many of the things that it's said is that presidential orders are in fact administrative. They're not meant to be policy. So they can't overtake law made by Congress, and they can't get rid of it. So what's happened here is a clash on the legal basis for what the president was announcing without Congress's approval.
Yeah.
That's the important feature. So, and the second bit is the strategy of it. The truth is right now is when he put the huge sanctions on this sort of game where they rose and rose and rose, something really interesting happened in the United States. For the first time ever, all those great blue chip companies who are full of very wealthy people, from Amazon to all the rest of it, it suddenly dawned on them as they were petrified as their shares were collapsing, that actually they're a double loser on this. Number one, why? Because those tariffs were likely to cut them off from their biggest markets, particularly China. But the second aspect of that is, not only were they losing their markets, but they suddenly realized they don't actually make anything in the USA anymore that's relevant to their exports. So their market and their production are all in the same damn country. It's called China.
Yep.
So suddenly they panicked. And they were screaming at the White House. Why? Because they have been so ridiculous, just like we have. We have no control over our markets and over our production. Yeah. That is how pathetic the West has been over the last 20 years. Bit by bit by bit, China owns us. And if we don't wake up to that right now, then there is no way on earth that we'll even get to any military action, because we are bought and paid for. And the problem with that is we will buy all of their restrictions in due course, and they will run us. And that, I'm not just saying...
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I don't think it's scaremongering at all.
That tariff showed just how weak the USA now is. The greatest economy in the world is in fact an economy based on Chinese exports and Chinese manufacture.
Absolutely.
is where we are heading rapidly if we haven't already reached there.
Just in case you're wondering, Sir Douglas Smith is not allowed to travel to China. He's sanctioned by them, but I say proudly so. I've said, you've advised me that I probably can't go and do me planned visit to the Great Wall of China for safety, because let's face it, we've seen me journalists, Wall Street Journal being, held in captivity. Although I'd like to think any government that took me captive or hostage takers would probably give me back after a week. Just my thought. Wouldn't they? Philip says they wouldn't last a week. Sir Douglas Smith, so appreciate you joining us. I really appreciate the stuff that you talk about a lot of the time, and people say, oh, come on, it's off agenda. It's not. This is actually the real basis of a lot of the madness in Western policy. Former Conservative Party leader Sir Douglas Smith, Phil Hingham, you were nodding to everything that he was saying there on the military front. I've been yabbering on about this as well, and people again think I'm just a conspiracy theorist, which I'm so far from. The West do not wake up to these blatant, obvious threats. Cyber and economics, that's how you wage war now.
Very much so, and everything that Sir Ian said is 100% accurate.
And is it what your military expert friends and the people you speak to people who are still in power? Is it what the senior military figures are worried about?
Well, some of them certainly senior intelligence figures, but we find the military buying into Chinese equipment and other bits and pieces as well.
What could possibly go on? I mean, it's like Winston Churchill buying weaponry from the Nazis.
Yes, and the threat is there. I too am not allowed to go anywhere near China. I know that if I set foot in China, I would be arrested.
I really wish I got to China before I started speaking out against China. But you just simply know they monitor everything.
Yeah, exactly. And they are slowly taking over the world.
Can I have the top bunk if we got arrested? We don't make jokes, but I mean genuinely, I know this company, Wall Street Journal, fighting for a very long time to get a journalist freed who was just doing his job.
But it's impossible to do your job in China, and they own everything. They are working their way through. They're hoovering all of our data up, and not just with the genomics, but about everything. And they're holding it in big databases until they can then get quantum computing to be able to analyse it. They don't care that they can't process the minutes, but they will do in the next couple of years.
They don't do a 24-hour news cycle. They don't do sound bites. They do long-term, 24-year stuff, even longer than that. Well, we're going to be talking to guest Brian Klein, who's author of a new book, The Spider Covenant, in a few moments' time, and he talks about it's all about basically how AI is being used at a level that we can't even comprehend, but it's actually it's happening very, very fast, and it's very, very dangerous. It's a huge threat to us. We're going to take a quick break right now. We're going to get to your calls. If you want to call in on that, love to hear your thoughts. But we're going to be taking some calls on about the NHS and do the doctors have support for their strike, and also that ongoing battle about whether or not we should basically decriminalise cannabis. We're talking about that on the show a lot yesterday after Sadiq Khan said it should be decriminalised, or should it be made a Class A drug, as a former police and crime commissioner has suggested. This is Talk, Home of Common Sense.
No, they don't say anything in case Lindsay doesn't pick them to make their little speeches. They're all terrified of him, and you know it.
I'm not denying that.
Well, I think that's pathetic, isn't it?
No, it isn't, because as an MP, you've got to be able to make what you're calling those little speeches. Those little speeches are really important. These are your chance. This is your chance as an MP to participate in the parliamentary process.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Thank you very much, Dee, for joining me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram still with me. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000 coming in on a whole variety of different topics. We were talking a little bit earlier about, well, whether or not the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, is right that actually doctors have lost a lot of public support, down from well over 50% down to below 40%, according to the latest polls, for taking strike action. This time they want a 29% pay rise. Of course, it's not just in one go. We have got doctors who are being paid a heck of a lot less than those train drivers who got a whopping great pay rise soon after Labour got to power. But let's talk about that with Jason. He's on the line in Wiltshire. Hello, Jason. Do you support the doctors having a strike ballot and going on strike if they vote for it?
Hi, Julia. Thanks for taking the call.
No, any time, mate. Thanks for calling.
One thing before we start, did you manage to ask Dr. HB about my little comments I spoke to you a few weeks ago about her being scary?
I did, and I think she's perfectly happy about that. Just to remind you, yeah, Jason's family registered with my mum when she was a GP, and she was regarded as quite scary. I mean, would you expect I'm her daughter? What do you think she'd be like?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I want to get on the wrong side of you either. So
very wise man. Very wise man.
Like daughter. But anyway, matters arising. This NHS jumping on the bandwagon again to ask for more money.
Yeah.
I saw this on another news channel this morning. For some reason,
shame on you.
For some reason, I cannot get talkTV on my digital aerial. I don't know why.
All right, then we'll let you off on this one occasion, but you know.
Yeah. But there was some person holding up this thing saying they can't work for £15 an hour. Now, I can't work out this £15 an hour because obviously they get paid for their normal working week. Overtime they get paid for is something like time in a third.
Yeah.
If they work weekends, it's time sort of plus 0.6.
Yeah.
If they work a bank holiday, they get that.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry, when we talk about someone's wages, we normally consider their normal working week and they're paid for that. And if they work extra, they're going to work a night and a bank holiday on top of it extra, then they're getting extra money.
Well, something like you said, the bank holidays or the weekends, it falls into their week. But also, what I don't know if they took into consideration is the 27 days plus the bank holidays start with a year. I think it's up to about 6 months full sick pay they get. When you start off in your roles in the NHS, you'll start at a certain figure. The next year it moves up, then it moves up. Yeah. As the years go on, your holiday entitlement increases. And they get.
Well, it does in most jobs. Yeah, and they've got a great pension deal. A huge percentage of income goes into. Is it something like 20% or something goes into their pension? But they're not hard up. That said, I'm of the view that people who've got 4 grade AA levels in maths and sciences and gone to medical school for 7 years and have been working as a doctor for 10 years, I think they should probably be earning a lot more than someone who presses stop go on a train.
Yeah, but again, I still want to know where this. I've seen nothing really to show how they're getting this. We only earn £15 an hour. I mean, is that out or after they've had all their pensions?
Yeah, you're saying it does. You're saying the numbers don't add up. Would you support them going on strike? I think the answer is no.
I wouldn't, because they've done this last year and got a pay rise with the inflation thing. Now, in theory, inflation's dropped. So are they going to give some of that hyperinflated money they received last year back?
No, the 22% was backdated 2 years. So it actually covered a period when there was 11% inflation. Not that everyone else got an 11% inflation, right? They are still, now they claim a figure about 23%, but I think it's less than that. They are still worse off in real terms than they were in 2010, as indeed are most of us. However, we've got a shortage of doctors in the NHS. Should we not, as we would in a private business, say, you know, you need to try and find a cleaner. You can't get a cleaner for whatever it is an hour you're offering. You have to pay more.
Anybody for anything. You can't get.
Well, you have to. If you pay more and you can keep more doctors in the NHS and you can recruit more doctors, isn't that worth it to keep more people getting treated and keep us alive?
Yes, but who's going to pay for it? Because when we've had our communist government that's already hyped everything up, I don't think us as a normal taxpayer can afford to have more taxes to be able to pay for something. I know it's an important.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking now Elon Musk has got a bit more spare time leaving the White House. He should come over and we can spend a lot less money on HR and DEI and pride flags and all of that.
Middlemen, like I said, there's a lot of middlemen or middle management in the NHS that could be scrapped.
Exactly. All right.
Hearing this £15.
Jason's unhappy about that. We'll look into that. Jason, appreciate your call. I'll send you regards to the scary mum. Hi, Mum. Let's talk to Lindsay, who's on the line in London. And Lindsay, you want to talk about cannabis because there seems to be this whole debate: should it be basically reclassified as as decriminalised, or should it be upgraded to a grey, Class A drug as if it were crack cocaine? What do you make of either of those arguments?
Hi, Julia. Thanks for taking my call. Well, really, I think it should be legalised. I think what Sadiq Khan is suggesting is, I mean, I live in London and it's de facto kind of decriminalised already in London. You can get it anywhere. I know plenty of people who grow it, who sell it, who you can get it from.
All right, everyone get in touch with Lindsay if you want to get you.
Well, I don't mean it like that, but I personally think that what he's saying is just sound bites, is to detract from his congestion charge rise, which he announced on the same day.
Yeah.
And it's trying to sound like it's all, we're doing something good. I personally listened to your radio call yesterday with Peter Blexley, and who's an ex-police officer.
And he was calling for it to be completely legalised, but all drugs completely legalised and then regulated and taxed.
Yeah, I think he took that a bit far, but I totally agree with cannabis. I think we have really outdated laws. We're still using UK drug laws from 1971. Most countries, like Spain, Germany, America, Canada, loads of places are looking at different things because they've lost the war on cannabis.
Well, I'm with Peter Hitchens. I know he was on Mike's show. I don't think we ever fought the war properly, but also I think it's a slippery slope. I really, really do. But I know a lot of people agree with you. The polling suggests that. I'm going to have to leave it. I've got to get to a break. But Lindsay, thank you so much for your call. By the way, I just find people are very lovely saying thank you for taking my call. We are so grateful for your calls. You're doing us a favour. We want to hear your opinions. So, don't be great. We're grateful to you. Thank you for calling in. 0344 499 1000 is that number. Philip Ingram, just a brief word on the cannabis.
Well, on drugs, I'm sort of right.
On drugs, just on drugs. Philip's on drugs.
No, I'm right of Genghis Khan. I think it should all be banned. And if you're going to legalise it...
But we do like our drinks, don't we?
Well, exactly. But if you're going to legalise it, you bring in a rule that if you're caught with any drugs on you, there and then, you have to consume all of them.
I don't think that's coming in. I'm just saying some places like Singapore and others, they manage this quite well.
They do.
If there's a very strict law and you're likely to get caught, it's amazing how many people obey it. Funny that, eh?
Go to Saudi Arabia and try drugs.
Do not go to Saudi Arabia. Don't go to Saudi Arabia, full stop, by the way. Don't normalise this country. Right, we're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to Brian Klein. He's the author of The Spider Covenant. And it's basically it's a rather terrifying story about the power of AI, but very, very prescient given the conversations we're having right now. We have with Sir Ian Duncan-Smith and indeed the announcement from John Healey, the Defence Secretary, about cyber hackers and tackling the AI threat. That's coming up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good afternoon. Welcome to the show. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. At 12:35 is the time. This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. We've still got Philip Ingram here. He's not on drugs. I know he sounded like he made that claim. He did not. But I tell you what, you're going to feel like you're on drugs when you hear a little bit more about what my next guest has to say. He is Brian Klein. He's the author of a brand new book, The Spider Covenant. I think it's your fourth book. Now, you didn't start. I just want to clarify that you didn't start off as an author. You also, here's your claim to fame. You were the TV director for some programmes people might have heard of, like Top Gear. For how many series?
Well, I only directed 28 series, so
a bit of a part-timer when it came to that. OK, I couldn't resist asking you a bit about that. Now, here's the new book. It's called The Spider Covenant. And, of course, it's got Nazi paraphernalia on and it's got a Nazi theme. However, it's also about modern technology, and it's about AI. Now, we've been talking about that today. Defence Secretary John Healey announcing this sort of cyber army of hackers and the threat of AI. We've just been speaking to former Tory leader, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, about how AI is being developed and used by hostile states like China. Your book, I mean, terrifying, Brian, terrifying. But tell us the plot and tell us why, actually, in lots of ways, reality is even more terrifying than the fiction.
Well, it's a perfect question, Julia, because in the last week, when I tell you what's been happening, it's incredible. Briefly, it's a political thriller. It's set across 2 timelines. The main plot is in the present, and it involves a network of politicians across the world who are all using deep fakes of themselves, a new generation of deep fakes. Now, we've all seen on our Facebook and Instagram and on YouTube Trump and Obama, but we've never seen a deep fake with a brain that works live. But if you think about it logically, there's no reason why it can't happen. And
because AI
can control the brain.
Can think on its feet.
So when I wrote the book, I wrote it, you know how long it takes for a book to become published? When I wrote it 18 months ago, I got the first idea when I read about a new museum in Florida where Salvador Dali, the Dali Museum, greets you when you come in. His brain, he's a deep fake, the whole body. This is true, this is 3 years ago. His brain had been programmed with 209,000 questions you would ask him, which meant he can talk fluently to you. You know, what's your favourite painting? When did you do this? Blah, blah, blah. And I thought, well, why couldn't you have 1 billion answers to every political question, so you'll never get tripped up, you'll bathe in the afterglow as a politician, you'll do your live interviews. But since COVID, people like you are used to saying, oh, they'll do it in their office, they'll do it down the line, they'll do it on Zoom, on Teams. So basically the idea is that these politicians they're deploying deep fakes to win power because they know what to say.
They're kind of better than the real thing.
They're better than the real thing.
Well, currently we've got AI fakes, and every now and then you see something on social media, you go, oh, well, is that real or is that not real? And you often don't know. But we also had the situation with Emmanuel Macron being smacked in the face by Brigitte Macron. First response to the Élysée Palace, it was AI and it was fake.
Are you serious?
And it was real, and there were 3 different TV cameras that caught it. But it was real. But interesting that was their first leap to it, but we were able to disprove that. But there is a real concern now, and we've had a lot of celebrities, you know, AI deepfake, you know, of pornography and the like. The technology from when you started writing this book to now it being published, and it's published tomorrow.
It's actually out today.
Out today. Yeah. The technology has moved on exponentially, hasn't it?
Can I tell you what's amazing? I started writing it and I thought, am I writing sci-fi? This is 18 months ago. I don't want to do sci-fi. I want a thriller that is real.
Yeah.
I found the world's leading AI deepfake guy who was in France, and I emailed him, didn't know me, and I said, would you just look at these bits from my book and tell me what you think? Next minute, his PA emailed me and said, oh, he's coming to London, can you do a breakfast meeting at 7? I never do. I mean, can you imagine Jeremy Clarkson doing a breakfast meeting at 7 in the morning?
I wouldn't want to be at that breakfast meeting.
No.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went, and the first thing he said was, he'd marked it all up. He said, how do you know this stuff, Brian? I said, well, I sort of don't know it. And he said, the Chinese, this is 18 months ago, he said the Chinese and the Russians are there, and the Americans are FBI is spending over $500 million, you know, doing it, researching it. So it was like, wow.
This is real. Okay, going back to the plot though, again, you said it's set in 2 different timelines.
So the second timeline is important. The first one I told you is the present day, but why are these politicians doing it? What is the conspiracy? The second part of the plot goes back 80 years to the end of the Second World War. And what I'm about to tell you, your listeners and viewers can Google, because I haven't made this up. Himmler knew the war was over, and he started an organisation called the Spinner, which means the spider. Hence, the book is called.
This is real.
This is all real now. You can Google this. I haven't made any of this up. And basically, all the SS officers were running, the senior ones were running the concentration camps. He knew they'd all be arrested as war criminals, unlike a regular German soldier who wouldn't be, because he was just
following orders.
So the first thing was, the Americans are coming, the Russians are coming, let's put everybody in normal uniforms, except every SS officer had a tattoo here on their arm showing their blood group. All the Americans needed to do was check people's arms, your SS. So he ordered, in the last months of the war, everyone to have their tattoos removed, right? Everyone. This is all true.
Yeah.
And then of course, in those days, you're left with a big scar, so it's just as bad. You just look.
Yeah.
Anyway, then he said, right, I've got to get you 10,000 people out. And he got hundreds of millions then in that money of dollars. And people were sent around the world with new identities, but not just that.
A huge number went to South America, didn't they?
South America, Spain, Italy. But here's the point, Julia. They were given millions of dollars. So, as well as having a new identity, they could become businessmen, industrialists, bankers. And therefore, basically, that meant that their descendants would have this power and influence, and people believe now that the grandchildren are all powerful people. So I took that idea.
That was actually a deliberate policy. That's documented.
Yes, it's documented to say we'd have a political Reich rather than a military Reich. That was the future.
Wow.
So I took that idea and made it into a thriller. So those are the people controlling it. And they then suddenly, when COVID happens, they go, this is brilliant for AI. We can actually deploy deep fakes. Everyone's used to saying, oh, the politician can't come into the studio. But imagine this, that last point, imagine this. 2 years ago, the little muscles around the mouths of deep fakes, they couldn't get it quite right. It looked out of sync by about a frame. It just looked wrong. Now they've done it, but also you can do this. You can put your hand in front of your face without blurring the fake image.
They've made them so much better. I mean, that's it. Their technology is moving on so much. There is that real threat.
Yeah.
I mean, it is extraordinary, again, when someone writes a fictional book like that, then as you say, you discovered yourself, this is more worrying in real life. Do you think, from the experts you've spoken to, that people understand that real threat? Because there is this concern, especially when, a lie can go around the world before the truth has got its boots on. So you can have a deep fake that's very, very convincing. Often with Donald Trump, the reality is often more mad than the reality than anything fake. But something can be spread, and a lie goes around the world, and it can change people's perceptions, and it can change policy, could even, let's be honest, spark wars. There is a real concern about this, isn't there?
Can I tell you something? This is what I'm about to tell you happened last week. This is true. So this is nothing to do with my book. My book was Deepfake Politicians. Last week, a company were doing a big Zoom in Scotland. I'm not going to name the company because I can't. But this is all true. And basically, the financial director on the email chain got an email saying, we're bumping the Zoom by half an hour. He saw everyone's name on the Zoom, so what would you do? You go on half an hour later. The Zoom went ahead. A deep fake was put on by these scammers. Wait for this. The people on the Zoom had known this guy for between 3 and 5 years. He needed some codes to transfer £2.5 million. He got it. Half an hour later, the real financial director logged on to no Zoom, and the money had gone. This was last week. So what I wrote about, it's actually happening in all our lives.
Yeah, my husband's in IT, and he's constantly with the clients and trying to explain. It's so difficult. I mean, you get some amount of times we'll get emails from the bank and saying, can you check this, can you check that, or even some online shopping, and you get a query. I mean, we all get text messages and scams. But there's the I'm a Nigerian prince, but I can't get my money out of
we all know
Nigeria. That one. Laugh, play along with it just for fun. But the scams are getting so sophisticated, and again, you're thinking, but I'm in an email chain with somebody. I'm emailing this person. I've spoken to them many times. I might be doing a video call with them, but actually, someone can insert that AI into the middle of that, and it is very, very, very scary. Do you think that people are even capable of taking this seriously? Because our government, we're talking about people, we've decided it's a good idea to build some new reservoirs. We thought it might be a good idea to stop, illegal migrants entering the country. They can't even match any of that. Do you think they're capable of dealing with this threat?
Do you know what? They're going to have to be. I mean, in 2022, just after the war started in Ukraine, Russia posted a deep fake of Zelensky saying, put your arms down. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And that's on YouTube now. It's still there. Now, when you look at it after 10 seconds, as I said, the mouth isn't right. 3 years on.
But also people looking at it on a phone as opposed to on a big
screen. It distorts it, you look at it, the voice is perfect. Apparently, there's a technology now. There's enough material of you, Julia, on YouTube and on TV, your voice, your image. They could create a perfect deep fake of you in 2 days.
It'd probably be more popular.
No, they really could.
Did you notice how neither of those gents went, no.
You can't be the real thing. It wouldn't be.
No, but this is the thing. Look, I must ask you, before I let you go, I must ask you about Jeremy Clarkson. He's in the news constantly. Apparently he's got a transsexual bull, according to the...
I spoke to him about an hour ago.
Did you?
Yeah.
According to The Sun.
He sent his best, by the way.
Oh, does he? Oh, bless him. I did Have I Got News for him once, but it went well half the time, but we'll see. Okay. But But I've been watching the farm. I have actually gone back to watch the beginning of the farm, going back from Word Go, right, before I watched the new series. Yeah. And of course, he's made famous. He's such a huge global star because of Top Gear. You were involved in that. I always loved my favourite thing. I mean, I was really bored when you were talking about cars. No, but I loved all the other stuff.
Yeah,
it wasn't
blowing things up.
Yeah, just talked about cars, and then loved the road trips and all of that. Been great fun. Like, what are your best memories of all of that? Because that was an era of TV that was so much better than what we've got a lot of the time these days. No, it was.
Can I tell you my favourite memory?
Come on.
Oh well, first of all, can I just tell you as well? Because Jeremy rang me on the way here in the car, and he said, "Look on my Instagram." Everyone goes on his Instagram now. He read the book last week in a day, and so he's posted it, which is lovely and all that. Yeah. But when I think back to a time which was only 10 years ago, how telly has changed. Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz came on live to drive around the car, around the track. Yeah. Prince Charles, who, as he was then, was meeting him in Leicester Square for the Royal premiere of a terrible film called Night and Day, but it was Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise was an hour and a half late because of Top Gear. No, 100%. And I'm with him, and he's going, when they do the lap, it was raining, and he knew...
Star in a reasonably priced car.
Thank you. Very good. Star in a reasonably priced car. He knew that if it was raining, you'd go a second slower around the corners. He's into cars. He wanted to go top. He'd promised Matt Damon he would go top. So he looked at the weather forecast and said, well, it's going to dry out in 2 hours. And his PR people all around him, helicopter,
got to go and see
helicopter parked there. You can't. We've got Prince Charles. You've got a rock. I'm staying. And he did. And then last thing, I got home that night from Dunsfold where we filmed. I put on the local news, where they do the whole thing about the premiere. And the voiceover went, no one could understand why Tom Cruise was an hour late. And I thought, I know why.
And what was his time in the end?
Top.
Well, it paid off. It paid off, absolutely. This book, Brian Klein, The Spider Covenant. It's not about Jeremy Clarkson, but it is about stuff that we really do need to worry and know about. Thank you very much. Just before I let you go, Philip Ingram, just very briefly, your reaction to this, because you've been nodding along to a lot of what Brian was saying.
Very much so. We have to be worried about that today, but AI and deepfakes are in their infancy. It's going to get a lot worse very, very quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't even know you're in here right now. I don't even know if you're real. It's just a glitch. Brian Klein, great to meet you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. 12:48 is the time. Up next, going to talk about the lovies virtue signalling on Gaza. Of course they are. That's up next. This is Talk.
They'd rather be around there waving rainbow flags and Palestinian flags and joining in and then catching real criminals. That poor old guy.
I know what they're doing. They're doing it by the book. Give us the knife. If you don't give us the knife, we will have to taser you. He's 92. He's got one leg. It's just...
I think they need striking off, to be honest.
Well, they are going to come before a disciplinary board at the police where they'll be tried.
The poor man, and he's dead now. That's terrible.
It really is.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk, the home of common sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still here, or is he? Or is he just AI? We don't know. It's far too lifelike. But anyway, look, let's talk about, they're all still here too, the virtue signalling lovies, the likes of Gary Lineker. Oh, he hasn't gone away, folks. Now he's going to talk more freely about all his political views, which are totally uninformed. Dua Lipa, Benedict Cumberbatch, Annie Lennox, the usual suspects. They signed a letter to the Prime Minister calling on him to end the UK's complicity in in Gaza. It's addressed to Sir Keir Starmer, and it's basically famous names in the world of media and the arts, joining leading doctors, academics, campaign groups and a Holocaust survivor. They always make sure they get one Holocaust survivor, accusing the British government of continuing to allow UK arms to be sold to Israel, providing licences for arms, and effectively they are complicit with the deaths of children in Gaza. Well, let's talk about this with Jake Wallace-Simons. He's author of Israelophobia, the newest version of the oldest hatred and what to do about it. Very good afternoon to you, Jake.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Thank you so much for joining me. First thing I saw when I saw this headline was these people are complicit with Hamas, are they not? I mean, what are they arguing about? What our complicity in the deaths in Gaza?
It's something about arms sales, I think. I mean, the UK sells a negligible amount of arms to Israel by comparison to...
They're less than 1% of the arms that Israel uses.
Something like that. I mean, the thing that I like about all this is imagining Benjamin Netanyahu picking up the phone and saying, what, Benedict Cumberbatch wants me to stop the war?
Well, in that case... yes, I won't worry about the safety of my nation and my people from a terrorist organisation on my doorstep. Benedict Cumberbatch has spoken.
Exactly. Forget the hostages. It's Sherlock. So we've had the actors, we had the authors this week as well, the novelists. I mean, the fact that they're known for making up stories, that's literally why they're famous, didn't seem to affect the fact they're trying to label Israel's campaign of self-defense a genocide without anybody noticing. And we had Hollywood people the week before, so they're all out in force. It's part of this broad propaganda campaign that's been launched because Israel's trying to win the war. And because it's trying to...
How very dare they? How very dare they? Now, listen, there are so many reports, and loads of people who have the misfortune of watching BBC and Sky News TV will actually see report after report. And, I've got really good friends who are really informed about lots of things, and they'll just say, like, yes, but, I mean, they're killing so many children. It's awful. Nobody wants children to die, or indeed any civilians to die during war. Frankly, I don't even want conscripted soldiers, or even, soldiers who've been there for a long time to be dying in wars if they're fighting a good cause. But nevertheless, we are seeing this, and we are seeing footage on our TVs of people scrabbling for food. We're seeing images of children in shrapnel wounds in hospitals. We've got doctors on our screens. We've got people talking in the UN telling us how awful the impact on the civilians of Gaza has been, and it's all Israel's fault. Can you debunk any of that?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that war is hell and there is suffering in war. It wouldn't be war if there wasn't. And that's why we try to avoid it, apart from if you're Hamas. So there's that. But there's also a huge exaggeration and myopic focus just on the civilian casualties and not on all the jihadis who are killed by Israel. I mean, at least half of the casualties incurred in Gaza are jihadi combatants. But nobody looks at those. Everyone just focuses on the civilians and particularly on the children because that pulls at the heartstrings. Yeah. Something in our culture that just associates Jews with enjoying killing children. It's been that way ever since the 12th century, and it's still around today. And yet nobody cares about the 500,000 Yemeni kids who are starving, who are suffering malnutrition. 1 in 2 kids under the age of 5 in Yemen is suffering malnutrition and starvation. According to the UN, you don't see people out on the streets protesting against that.
Again,
you don't see Gary Lineker objecting to that.
No, and you and I spoke about this many times. And again, it's not even about people expressing concern about Muslim children. Apparently, we don't care about Muslim children, but they don't seem to care about Muslim children who are being attacked by their own Muslim leaders as well. I mean, that's that is the reality. But when we have doctors, doctors working for charities, well-known charities, talking, at the UN or else on our TV screens, telling us that this is different from any other war, is it?
No, of course it's not. But it is different in the way that Israel's actually killing fewer civilians by a proportion to the number of combatants it's killing compared to any other campaign. But, it's just made you so cynical. You can't trust the UN anymore. No. You can't trust, even doctors who go out there risking their lives are filled with propaganda. I mean, we had the UN chief, humanitarian chief last week saying that 14,000 babies were about to die in 2 days. 2 days passed. Those 14,000 babies didn't die because they weren't in danger of that. And he was on TV on CNN just this week claiming that 10,000 lorries were being held up by Israel, aid lorries, and not being allowed to get into Gaza. Now, I don't know if he's ever visited the Gaza border, but where would you park 10,000 lorries? I mean, even the interviewer looked quite bemused. This stuff is just patently a load of rubbish, and yet it's being pumped out by people who have this authority and are using it to pressure Israel
And I'm always amazed, actually, the number of war reporters who are apparently completely and utterly shocked by the fact that there are deaths in war. Never seen that before. I mean, again, it is awful. And we're not being glib about it. You don't want any child in Gaza to die any way that I want any child in Gaza to die, or indeed anyone, apart from the people who run Hamas, who are very, very happy for children in Gaza to die. The reason we know that is they have stated publicly on many, many occasions that their strategy is to lure, Israel into a war where they can then use that propaganda to further their cause. What do you make of the claims of famine and the solution from the Israelis to say, like, well, look, we are going to basically provide, of American and Israeli sort of funded food that's going to go in, but we're going to provide it in the south of the country. We're going to distribute it so Hamas don't get it, but also to get people out of the north of the country because we want people to move. Aid agencies are saying, we don't want anything to do with this because this is a war effort, not a humanitarian effort. What do you say to that?
Well, the aid agencies have been compromised by Hamas. Many UN employees in Gaza have been found to be also members of Hamas and Islamic Jihad, about 1,200 of them, according to Israeli intelligence. And many of them actually partook in the violence on October the 7th and also held hostages in their homes and in UN facilities. Terrorists have used UN facilities in Gaza and elsewhere to launch attacks. And so they are completely compromised and they don't want to lose that control. And that's why they're launching this huge propaganda campaign accusing Israel of being of committing war crimes.
And they are winning that campaign because I think an awful lot of journalists in this country, I don't expect celebrities like Dua Lipa and Gary Lineker to know their stuff, but I do expect the journalists to hold people to account and question a lot of the videos. Again, no information comes out of Gaza without Hamas having approved it. Why are we only seeing one side? Jake Wallace-Simons, always so good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Philip Ingram, look, you I know you agree with an awful lot of what Jake Wallace-Simons said, but again, we see all this footage, we're told all these things about Gaza. We're told these are independent journalists. The BBC will say this is an independent journalist. We're seeing footage. Why shouldn't we believe it?
There's no such thing as anything independent inside Gaza, because if they don't put the message out that Hamas want, then either they will get killed or their family members will get killed.
It's that simple.
It's that simple. And people try quoting history and saying this is Palestinian lands. Hebrew language was written and spoken as far back as 1200 BCE. The Muslim faith didn't come into the 7th century. Hebrew, the Jews had.
But even aside from that, again, it's just the dishonesty that's reported about this, and then people say, "Oh, you're seeing these children die in real time on outline," but he doesn't care about the ones he doesn't see.
I've seen the same child die 4 or 5 times and be starving 4 or 5 times in 4 or 5 different videos over the last year.
Verified, it's the same child.
The same child.
Wow. Interesting point. Philip Ingram, thank you very much indeed. Ian Collins is here. Let's talk of kumquats in this exchange, please, because you just reduced us all to...
Well, indeed. Well, we discovered lots
giggles yesterday.
We discovered lots of things about the kumquat yesterday.
Oh, God, here he is
because
again. He's off again.
Well, only...
He was swiping a kumquat yesterday.